Very good morning, all of you. Let us start.
Great.
Many thanks to all the participants for sparing time on this lovely Saturday morning to attend the first online event of IIA Lucknow Club. I believe this is just the coincidence, but it is decided by the Almighty and Lord of intellect and wisdom that we are conducting our first event on auspicious occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi. So we will begin the event by praying Lord Ganesha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Om Ganpate Namah. So it means may Lord Ganesha remove every obstacle between one and one's well-being and help us to achieve Riddhi and Siddhi. So today we have with us Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar. He has taken over as the president of IIA India in the last annual general meeting of IIA. We have Mr. Nikhil Kochar with us, Chief Advisor of IIA India. We have Mr. Suman Chadda with us, who is the past president of IIA India. Then we have Mr. Deepak Badwan with us, who is the former CEO of IIA India. We have Mr. Sandeep Bhallaji with us. He is the president of IIA Delhi chapter. Also, he has got elected as secretary of IIA India in last AGM. We have Ms. Sana Bakai with us, who is the chairperson of IIA Delhi chapter, Women's Circle. And then we have Mr. Saket Mehra with us, who is the vice president of IIA Delhi chapter. But before we begin, on behalf of the executive committee of the IIA Lucknow Club and all the members of IIA Lucknow Club, I would like to extend wholehearted thanks to all the respected leaders from IIA India and Delhi chapter BOG for sparing time to join us and address the esteemed professionals from Lucknow and Uttar Pradesh. Thanks to all of you. They all have wholeheartedly contributed and supported over the last 2 decades in multiple initiatives taken by IIA India. And we have played a vital role in taking the internal audit profession to an iconic level by bringing global best practices in internal audit and disseminating the knowledge through numerous trainings. So dear Nikhil sir, TK sir, Deepak sir, Suman sir, Sid, Sana and Saket, we feel honored to have you all with us today and excited to learn, unlearn and relearn from your diversified experience and eagerly looking forward to hear you shortly. Today, as we are together at the first online event of Lucknow Audit Club, I recollect my discussion early this year where all of you had shown us the path to have the Audit Club launched at Lucknow and which is aligned to the overall vision of IIA India. I would also like to extend sincere thanks to all members of the executive committee of the Lucknow Audit Club, including Shri Hemendra Soni ji, Shri Rahul Verma ji, Shri Mohit Badani ji, for coming together and supporting this noble initiative to launch the Lucknow Audit Club of IIA Delhi chapter in February this year. Last but most importantly, I would like to thank all the well-wishers and members of the club who have extended their selfless support. Just to name few of them: Ajit Kumar, Sunil Pandey ji, Anwar ji, Rahil Mohammad ji, Rajesh ji, Jitendra ji, Prabhat ji, Ravish ji, Bharat, Sachin, Sagar, Nikhil, Akash, Mohit, Tushar, Saurabh and Piyush. I'm not sure if I'm missing, but my sincere apologies in case I'm not able to recollect more names, which is purely unintentional. Thanks a lot to all of you and a very warm welcome. So now if we can go to the agenda. So let me take you through the agenda for the day. In some time, I would unveil the journey we embarked since February this year and roadmap of some select activities planned for Lucknow Audit Club in 2020. Then we have Shri Hemendra Soni ji along with Shri Rahul Verma ji, who has generously agreed to provide us the overview of the internal audit relevance and opportunities for the professionals. Then we have Mr. Siddheshwar Bhallaji with us, who is a wonderful speaker, and we would be fortunate to listen to him while he speaks on the role of internal auditors in corporate governance. Then we have Ms. Sana Bakai, the chairperson IIA Delhi chapter Women's Circle, who will talk about her vision and initiatives being taken to support the growth of women professionals in internal audit. Then we have with us Mr. Saket Mehra, who will talk about IIA initiatives to support students to build a promising career in the field of internal audit. Once again, many thanks to all of you for sparing time today and looking forward to hear you all. We would like to begin with welcome address by Mr. Nikhil Kochar. Nikhil ji is a senior partner with GHS and Associates a qualified chartered accountant and certified internal auditor. He brings with him 30+ years of rich experience serving diverse industry sectors. Mr. Kocher holds the position of Chief Advisor of IIA India and is in the board of multiple companies in India and USA. He also chairs the Audit and Risk Management Committee as independent directors in various companies. I would request Nikhil sir to welcome the esteemed group of professionals.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar, President IIA India, Mr. Siddheshwar Bhalla, President of the Delhi chapter and Chair of the Membership Committee of IIA India, the Executive Committee members of the Lucknow Audit Club, Mr. Mohit Gupta, President, Mr. Hemendra Soni, Vice President, and also past Chair of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, Mr. Rahul Verma, Secretary, as well as Chair of the ICAI Lucknow chapter, and Mr. Mohit Badani, leaders from IIA India, including Sumant, Deepak, Saket, Sana. It really gives me great pleasure to be a part of this wondrous event where we are launching the Lucknow chapter. We could not have a better day to initiate this on the auspicious occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi. So I must compliment the executive committee for its wonderful planning. As far as the subject is concerned, the role of internal audit in corporate governance and relevance and opportunities, I think, is something which is there uppermost in our minds, especially for most professionals who are in this field. I have a long association with Uttar Pradesh. My father was a medical officer in the Indian Air Force, and at one point of time he was commanding the Air Force Hospital in Kanpur, and after that also in Allahabad. And there we struck up various relationships, had an absolutely wonderful time. And many years later, when I became a chartered accountant and I was looking for work, one of the friendships which had been struck up was with a very large UP-based group, which even in those days, and I'm going back to 1984, before I think many of you would have been born, it was over 1,000 crore company at that point of time. So we were very happy to get introduced to them, and they said, well, how can you help us? And I said, we would like to do internal audit because that is a field I selected many years ago. So we were given the internal audit at a royal fees of, I think, 2,250 rupees per month, which was approximately also the salary of a chartered accountant in those days. And when we walked in for our first meeting after getting the internal audit and being appointed as internal auditors, internal audit was not very commonly practiced in those days. The first question which someone asked the person who was introducing was, "Ye kiske through aaye hain?" So I think that is something which was very much a part of Indian corporate culture in many states of our country. But I don't think kiske through aana is going to help you to stay in the job unless you skill yourselves. In the good old days, and I would say even today, a connection may help you get your foot into the door, but it is ultimately going to be your skill sets which allows you to stay on in the job, to contribute. And that is where I think the Institute of Internal Auditors can really help all of us to become more professional, to become more skilled, to be able to add value, whether it is in terms of evaluating the risks, whether it is in terms of evaluating the controls, whether it is evaluating the governance, which is also a part of today's subject, because all these go to add value. And if it is a listed company, they definitely add value even to the stock market price of an organization, because a company which is well governed is a company which is more respected by the investors. A little bit about IIA India is that we in June this year crossed a record membership, 4,000 people. We are of course represented in the 6 metro cities of the country, but in addition to that we have 8 audit clubs. I think under the dynamic leadership of Sid, we have actually had at least 3 audit clubs being launched within the last year. Actually 3 plus 2, 5. So we've had Ahmedabad, Lucknow, Ludhiana, Guwahati, Bhubaneswar. And I think this kind of gives you an indication of the kind of dynamism and vibrancy which is there in IIA India today. The reason why more and more people are joining us is that the demand for internal auditors is increasing with the increased need for corporate governance across the country. As a result, relevance is going up, the number of opportunities are going up, and I'm sure the speakers, the distinguished speakers we have covering today, these particular topics will definitely be able to shed a lot more light in these particular areas. The IIA can offer you a huge number of benefits. We have an absolutely amazing magazine, both globally as well as in India. It was earlier a quarterly, now under the able editorship of Sana, it's going to become a monthly. And the last issue, which was the first monthly issue, was greatly appreciated by everyone. The amount of learning opportunities which you would get with IIA India are absolutely phenomenal. Members are entitled to huge discounts on the sale of publications by IIA Global. In addition to that, there are a lot of training opportunities. There are on-demand training courses which are available. They could be on risk, on governance, on ethics, on compliance, on financial service industries, on actually implementing audits. These are all areas in which you can beef yourself up. You may be aware that the Institute of Internal Auditors globally is also a thought leader and a standard setter on all areas pertaining to internal audit, including governance, risk, and internal controls. And if you attend some of our training programs, I'm sure you will all benefit. In addition to this, I would like to emphasize that a couple of leadership initiatives which have taken place are in the area of forming the women's circle, insisting that every chapter today have representation of both a certain representation of women as well as qualified CIAs. I think those of you youngsters who are considering must definitely look at going in for the CIA certification. It will stand you in very good stead. I would also solicit that all of you go through the IPPF, the International Professional Practices Framework, also known as the standards. It's also called the Red Book. This small book is all of 20 pages of reading material. And if you read those 20 pages, I can assure you, you will feel that your fundamentals and internal audit have already become stronger. This is just the start. There is so much more which we can do. For your information, IIA in the last 4-5 months has been organizing more than 10 webinars in a month, and a significant percentage of these are free or at substantially reduced rates. Earlier, I remember we used to do seminars which used to cost maybe 10,000 rupees to attend, anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 rupees to attend for one day. Today, you can attend a half-day webinar for as little as 500 or 1,000 rupees. And the quality of knowledge which you gain will definitely be world-class. So I think there are a huge number of benefits, and I look forward to all of you making full utilization of the opportunities which are offered. Thank you very much. My very best wishes to the Lucknow Audit Club and back to the organizers. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you this morning. Happy and auspicious Ganesh Chaturthi to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So thanks a lot, Nikhil sir, for such a warm welcome and taking us through how an internal auditor can add value to all the stakeholders in an organization, and how the members of the Institute of Internal Auditors can derive immense benefits from IIA. Thanks a lot, sir. Now I would request TK sir to address the gathering. Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar, popularly known as TK, has over 33 years of experience in the industry. After brilliant academic career, he joined Unilever in 1986 and was with them for 22 years in various finance, audit, and general management roles in India and abroad. He joined the Times Group as their Group Head of Management Assurance Services in October 2008. He is also on the Governing Council of Loyola College, Chennai. He is also the Director in the National Heart Institute, Delhi. He took over as President of the Institute of Internal Auditors of India in last AGM. Welcome, TK sir, and I would request you to address the privileged group of professionals.
Good morning, the executive committee members of Lucknow and the members of Lucknow Club. We are very happy to note that you kicked off the first event of the clubs this year. It's indeed one of our great objectives that we must reach out to more and more members across the clubs, not only the 6 chapters which we used to reach out to in the past. So I'm very happy to note that an excellent program has been put together today by Mohit and his team on corporate governance and internal audit opportunities to the Lucknow Club members. As you all know, a growing economy and a growing UP requires huge amount of audit and internal audit services. There is bound to be a lot of opportunities with the dynamism of the current government. A lot of investments are flowing in, and correspondingly, there'll be huge opportunities for auditing and finance professionals. Here, I must make a distinction between statutory audit, which most of us, given our background in ICAI, have been focused to. Internal audit is a very wide domain. It goes much beyond statutory attestation of reliability of the financial statements, and statutory audit really, internal audit really can have very significant impact on the results, on the governance, and the success of an enterprise. An internal audit professional, along with sound risk management experience and exposure, can significantly add value to the business and prevent many things going wrong. Some of the areas historically we have all been focused more on financials and transactions checking and transactions reporting, but we need to go much beyond that and get into more on strategy execution, things which are not going right, things which have to be effective in each of the business functions. Here we need to train our audit professionals extensively. This is what we are trying to do. Nikhil mentioned about extensive training, particularly post this technology has given us opportunities to reach out instantly to thousands of people across the country. That's what we have been trying to do since March. More and more trainings have been held on wide range of topics, which I'm sure is going by the popularity of people who are attending these programs, are enabling the skills and the knowledge base of internal auditors. So having said that, what we are trying to do this year, after I have taken over, is to build on the momentum my predecessors have created and also add more and more student memberships to the organization. Students of the future, we have a responsibility to make sure that we have a sound inculcation of auditing practices and knowledge base to students across the country. More and more women are coming into the profession, and when women are highly underrepresented in our economy, and it's more a welcome change that society is changing. And just like many other countries, even in Islamic countries, we see more women employed in audit, finance, and accounting profession. I'm sure more and more women will also come into your profession in the future. Keeping this in mind, Sana, and I'm sure the Leadership Women's Forum, which has been created last year, is giving huge amount of momentum and impetus to getting more women on audit profession and getting them properly trained, equipped. We are also revamping our website. Soon it will be launched, which is intended to provide more mentorship, internship opportunities, and also a platform for internal audit professionals who want to change jobs, and also an opportunity for corporates to recruit suitable internal auditors through our platform. There are a lot of committees working on membership growth, trainings, events, and also on corporate connect, where our visibility of the audit profession within the corporate world, particularly of CIA, is enhanced. Though CIA is a huge body globally, close to over 2 lakh certifications in over 170 countries, in India, it has not remained very active on the minds of seniors, leaders across. That's because ICA has been a dominant player. We don't have any particular grudge against them, but they have a different role and we have a different role. We would like to emphasize on audit, internal audit, and risk management, where ICA is more focused at regulatory financial statement attestation. So it's internal audit is a huge domain, is huge opportunity which it can present to our members, not only in India, but abroad as well. And many countries, particularly Gulf, where most of Indians go for work, and also young professionals who do SOX work all over the world are immensely gaining from CAA certifications. The intention is to develop large number of CAs or other finance professionals into CAAs as well. CAA certification should be able to provide them more and wider employment opportunities, practice opportunities, and also become better professionals. More importantly, the skills and knowledge should equip them to help run the businesses better. The very, very important issue is our skills and knowledge should enable the industry to run the businesses better. If the industries are run better, the economy does well, the lesser problems, lesser failures, and more protection of jobs. So it's a larger social purpose we are serving. I'm sure if we train more good internal auditors, we will serve the society better. With these few words, comment the initiative taken by Mohit and his team at Lucknow. I'm sure more such initiatives, we would like to take it across to other clubs, and we would like to open more clubs. Look forward to interacting with you, and all the very best to you in our endeavors. I'm sure would like to see your club growing more in size, more in activities, more in dynamism, and contributing significant value to the industry and other organizations in your region. All the very best to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, TK sir, for your kind words. I can say confidently that IAA Lucknow Club will grow fast and members will take benefit from the various initiatives that you have already introduced and that you would introduce from time to time. Thanks a lot, TK sir, for your address. Now I would request Deepak sir to address the gathering. Deepak ji is former CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors of India, former senior advisors of KPMG India, and currently on the Global Advocacy Committee of IIA Global. He's a subject matter expert of internal audit and currently providing online risk assessment and support services to internal auditors, business managers, and independent directors through his website devahelpdesk.com. Welcome Deepak sir, and may I request you to address the esteemed group of professionals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mohit, and good morning, Executive Committee and members of Lucknow Audit Club, my colleagues at IIA India, and esteemed speakers. Happy and auspicious Ganesh Chaturthi. What a lovely day to start with an activity, or organization, a structure. Think about this aspect and you'll succeed. Thinking about Lucknow, Lucknow has a prominent and distinct culture that impacts different facets, whether it's food. We all have enjoyed Awadhi food, or generating competent professionals. For example, over the decades, many of the leading doctors in the country have been from KGMC, or leading pharmacology research in India. CDRI is synonymous with it. And those that have an interest in the subject have all heard of the legendary Dr. Nityanand Padam Shri and his work on a particular molecule. Education, music, dance, and what is of significant interest to me is literature. Allow me to recoin it. Work over centuries on logical thought and perceptions based on experience. That's literature. A lot to do with professionalism, roots of professionalism. My research interest is impact of culture. For a student of value generating organizations, it will be interesting for me to see the progress of the Lucknow Audit Club based on this rich culture the geography has. I will just speak a little bit from your perspective, thinking being in your shoes. I is organized at 3 levels: local, national, global, and each has a value addition to offer to its members. The way one can see it is that the effectiveness of the club is its ability to localize, to make sure that only the relevant aspects are offered to its members. It's, I think, localization, localization, localization. How can it equip its members to deliver useful value to clients, firms, family, profession, that is the stakeholders? So how important is the club's role in this? Let me share a slide with you to emphasize the point on localization. If you see this, that two sets of organizations, one of them, of course, are the leading Indian companies, their profits. On the other side are the global ones. So if you were to total all the Indian companies in this list, and probably it will be lower than the profit of the global one. So what are the processes, practices that are followed over there may not be very relevant to us at this moment over here. We are in a different stage. You know, like it's good to know international and cutting edge knowledge, but how relevant it is to us. And then similarly, if I was to, you know, think about Lucknow and I was to say what are the market over there, probably I may be wrong, but it's to do a lot with practicing professionals. It's not as much to do with chief internal auditors in probably large organizations. So as practicing professionals, how do we add value? So what are the aspects that we need to pick up? And localization is very, very important. It's a game changer, and we all start and we all move in different stages. So the maturity aspect, or whatever word you may want to use, is driven by the club. And what are the specific, and that probably would be an expectation if I was in IIA India to have from the club. And what would be the expectations from the club from local, national, and global? So if I was to be in your shoes, I would look right now at what are the resources and take advantage of what IIA India currently has. The president, Tyagarajan Kumar, is ex-Hindustan Levers and is a great one on structures and logical planning. Nikhil has a practical orientation. Siddheshwar Bhalla, the Delhi chapter president, finds creative opportunities and solutions, even in Banjar Jameen, planting seeds and waters them to be plants. Mohit is always on the go, doing the relevant activities. Sana can always make things go digital. So, and Sumant, of course, who's the next speaker, is a senior member, and he runs a very large professional firm for decades and can share valuable experience on the different stages of firm building. So you see how much relevant resources available. Anyway, the topic of active expectations was something I used to wrestle with during my years of active association with IIA India. Expectation should factor in the other strengths, capability, and interest to do value addition, I think. No point being having expectations based on the other's weaknesses or lack of interest. After deliberating, my views is that the real value that a club can offer to the members is to be a platform where they can practice and develop their thought leadership and leadership traits to organize. मैंने एक तरीके से एक मंच जहां पर हुनर और and interest आप दिखा सकते हो. In work, this opportunity will not come easily. My learnings were to work on the culture where honest failure does not matter, but order of magnitude success does. People don't remember failures, but do remember remarkable changes that you made in their professional thinking and capabilities. And I think a club can be a munch for people to develop that. Also, localization. I think these are two aspects, if I was in your place, I would be looking at. And now coming to the topic of today. There is so much literature on governance, and we all are looking at a good riddance to bad governance. And this is going on for the last 2 decades, not only in India, but all over the world. There are governance codes. It's been 2 decades to have, governance code. When I was in a large firm, and that was about 15 years ago, we actually spent so much time in analyzing all over the world the governance codes. There were over 100 governance codes, but last 15 years have seen excessive problems. In fact, it's not diminished. You had SOX and various acts to punish, to monitor. It didn't work. Now it's very clear how to go about doing it. So let me kind of set a precursor to today's discussion, and that is that what are the first thing, what are the outcomes that you look at from governance? So if I was to give somebody governance, or you were to give me governance, or we have given governance to the present team in our India and chapters and club, what are the outcomes? Probably you look at effective performance, responsible stewardship, and ethical behavior. Is there a fourth one? If so, please educate me, I'd like to know. So if these are the outcomes, what are the foundation principles behind it? You know, and it's very simple. Basically, there has to be a purpose through which you achieve these outcomes. There must be value generation every time you're adding value. Then, of course, strategy, oversight, and accountability. These are becoming the standards of good governance, incidentally, and there's international work going on this, not only through IIA, but in the international bodies which are studying this aspect. So going forward, the concepts are going to be very clear on governance, and it'll be very simple to basically frame thoughts of how to audit them. With this, I leave it to the learned speakers after me to actually enumerate various aspects. And I take this opportunity once again to welcome Lucknow Executive Committee members and public at large to the I fraternity. All the best and thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Deepak sir. Thanks a lot. I must apprise the members that Deepak sir is a man of great wisdom, and there's a lot that we aspire to learn from your rich experience, sir. Thanks a lot for taking us through setting at the tone of corporate governance. Now I would request Suman sir to address the gathering. Sumanji is the managing partner of TR Chadda and Company with over 34 years of experience in auditing, risk advisory, taxation matters, due diligence, and valuation. He is the past president of Institute of Internal Auditors India, and he continues to be on the National Council of IIA India. He has also served on the Internal Audit Standard Board of the ICAI and is a special invitee to the National Advisory Committee on Accounting Standards for implementing Ind AS in India. Presently, he is a member of the Managing Committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce, and he has been a speaker at various seminars organized under the aegis of different professional bodies. He has also co-authored many books on corporate law matters. Welcome, Suman sir, and I request you to address the esteemed group of professionals from Lucknow.
Thank you, Mohit, and your able team of the Lucknow Club, supported by Heminder, Rahul, another Mohit, I think, and under the superlative guidance and mentoring of the Delhi chapter led by Sid, Saket, Sana, and many more to invite me today on this auspicious occasion. And greetings to my colleague Nikhil, Deepak, TK, and all others from my IIA fraternity and friends. In today's context, the traditional model of doing internal audit under the umbrella of governance, risk and compliance, which we understand as GRC, has to reinvent itself. We all know that. But how? Internal audit today would more than ever need to provide solutions to poor organizational decision making and increasingly help in rectifying the failures to align control processes to the organization's strategic objectives, and also at times to opaque or ineffective risk management. What we need here is a 360-degree approach in internal audit to help us not only to survive, but also thrive in the brave new world. And what I would like to say is become the Nawabs of internal audit, coming from the Nawabi town and the city of Lucknow. Out of this, I personally feel doing a theory on GRC concepts is probably only the first 70 degrees, but of course very essential. But the balance 270 degrees is what I plan to briefly touch upon today. So I have a brief presentation which Mohit, can you run, or Sana, can you run?
Yes, sir. Sana has displayed it. It's visible on the screen.
Thank you, Sana. So attributes of outstanding internal auditor. So I must confess, this is the inspiration which I drew from Richard Chambers' book on trusted advisors, and a lot of the material I owed to that, and I've given credit in the presentation also. And I'm only going to be touching about some parts of it, as how to be outstanding internal auditors, and how to move beyond technical skills, and how to be a trusted advisor. We can go to the next slide, Sana, please. No, yeah. So anyway, I'll start. Basically, what I'm trying to mention here is, this is what the Trusted Advisor by Richard Chambers, it talks about personal, relationship, and professional attributes. Primarily, what we need to understand here and sit back and try and reflect is, outstanding internal auditors, like outstanding lawyers, teachers, artists, and doctors, are made, not born. Mastering skill is, we all know, a long and arduous process. It is only that true professionals dedicate themselves to at every step in their career. No one actually stumbles into greatness. I believe that becoming an outstanding internal auditor, or a trusted advisor for that matter, involves not only just what you know, that is risk control and governance expertise, but also how to get things done, that is the relationship acumen. We witnessed two internal auditors perform similar actions, but with very different outcomes. I suspect the reason is that the less effective internal auditor is strong in one trait and deficient in the other. It could be either. Till now, we have concentrated extensively on learning the technical skills of the profession. May it be to develop an audit plan for every engagement, document the results of the audit, craft a well-documented audit report. Let us say you write an audit report with which you identify deficiencies and offer recommendations for remedial action for that matter. Recommendations on which you believe the readers should take swift action. They are much more likely to do so with greater commitment if they trust you, believe that you know what you're talking about, and consider the work to you to be sound, fair, and objective, as opposed to doing only because of corporate policies or because the audit committee has mandated or is breathing down your neck. Becoming an outstanding internal auditor, therefore, takes years of experience, ongoing training, and an awareness of emerging trends in the professional environment. Most of all, it takes passion. We can go to the next slide, Sana. Basically, let me continue. So we have to be purely result focused. What happens after the report is delivered? Did the audit have an impact? Did it create productive and beneficial change in the organization? Did it identify opportunities for improvement? We feel the audit report is the be all and the end all of our assignment. No, probably it is a midpoint and it is an important milestone, but we need to look at the other questions and also keep that into our DNA. Outstanding internal auditors can care more about outcomes than output. What is the difference? They understand the outcome generated is more meaningful than the length of the report itself, or the number of findings and recommendations. Quality over quantity. How do we distinguish that? An internal auditor's mission is to not truly complete until management acknowledges your recommendations and also implement them, and the recommendations produce positive outcome. Being result focused means recognizing that the audit doesn't exist only to point out problems. Management often already knows about them. More importantly, it should provide solutions. The end result is not the report. It is making things better for the good of the company. That's what is key to the good internal audit. Next slide, please. How to deal with complexity, because it's easier said than done. You know, these presentations are all good, but practically, how do I jump into this situation and be equipped to handle it with so much complexity happening all around? What I'm relying on is IQ. We understand IQ is simple, which mental ability, our KRAs, our performance in our degrees, our knowledge which we acquire, all will be a subject of our IQ. EQ we also understand, which has taken a larger momentum in the last few decades, as emotional quotient. Basically, the ability to perceive, control, and express emotions. That's also so critical, and we already understand that. How are we successful in dealing with corporate politics, and how can we be more entrepreneurial, innovative, proactive, and comfortable with taking risks? But the third is also important, the curiosity quotient, the CQ, described as a hungry mind. People with higher CQ are more inquisitive and open to new experiences. They find novelty exciting and they generate original ideas. They can deal with complexity effectively because they tend to be more tolerant of the ambiguity and the nuance. They thrive in the VUCA world. and they're likely to expand the knowledge acquired over time. It is said, in fact, that the CQ is the ultimate tool to produce simple solutions to complex problems. Yeah, we can go ahead. Another aspect, so I'm going to take very few aspects of, the entire matrix which Richard Chambers had put in his lovely book. Dynamic communication. What do we understand by this? This is a critical attribute to be able to be good internal auditors. How to earn trust. So we often hear this remark that I agree with the recommendations, but I disagree with all the findings. I'm going to repeat this line and try to analyze and reflect on this probably just now or probably a little later. I agree with the recommendations, but I disagree with all the findings. What does it mean? In other words, the user didn't take exception to the fact that we had found issues that needed to be addressed. They actually acknowledged that. They were also ready to fix the problem. That wasn't the issue. Recommendations, management comment, all that was fine. But what was resisted is the tone of my report. His critical nature caused him to push back hard. Basically, it is a valuable lesson which we should learn. If our tone is one of pointing fingers or speaking down, we will dig ourselves into a deep hole that will be hard to climb out of, especially the next time we interact with that person. We see that every day in our experience. Next quarter we go, we will not get the input requirements or that kind of cooperation. We have to strive to maintain an open, civil, and a productive communication at all times. This is something which we must inculcate into our DNA amongst all our teams. Can we go ahead to the next slide? Inspirational. What differentiates between an inspiring leader from one who simply holds a leadership role? Basically, next slide, please. So, how to get started? Before that, just go back to the earlier slide. I just want to make a few comments. We have to let others lead. They do not necessarily take an entire hands-off approach, good leaders, but they also create opportunities for others to execute autonomy. We have to create opportunities for team members to take charge. That is so critical for, in any assignment, any activity, any cooperation. I have to coach and train these people to greatness. That is an attribute of a good leader today. Inspirational leader, not merely leading a vertical or any organization. We have to be constantly on the hunt for talent, and they have a tendency to find out and find it quickly. They also have to evaluate the future leaders' potential, determine their strengths and weaknesses, and guide them in building on the strengths and shortcomings of the weak areas. They should take great satisfaction, in fact, in the success of those they have mentored. The eye on the future is critical. And it is not so much about what we accomplish in our jobs today. It is about what those we train, whom we train, inspire, who can accomplish in the future. Build teams and promote teamwork. That cannot go without saying. And let me give you an analogy. In sports, teams are created with the core purpose of winning. Each team has to win. Each team has to outshine the other. In workforce, winning isn't the main purpose of the team. You want all the teams to win, but not at the cost of each other. So much of difference. Just see the analogy. Sports, my team has to win. In workforce, all teams have to win without the cost of each other. Team dynamics actually are deep-rooted in group dynamism and not in victory alone, with a focus on interpersonal relationships and collaboration across the firm. This is something we must understand so critical. Employ purposeful emotion. Basically, we have to achieve our purpose only if it is clearly seen to be sincere, honest, and uncalculated. Even if I have to get angry, I should get mad, but get over it. I may need significant, strong emotions and time, but I should get over it. It should not overplay and become a legacy of a memory which I carry or a grudge which I carry. Similarly, I have to lead through culture. In fact, there's a big subject today, auditing of culture, but that's for another day. But culture is how we do things around here. Inspirational leaders seek to build a culture that is based on values, is energetic, embracing transparency and recognizing the accomplishments of everybody. They strive to ensure that things are done around here the right way. Foster a culture of continuous improvement and you'll see magic. facing challenges, we have to deal with them honestly, and keeping employees and colleagues all informed of the good news and the bad news. We should not try and hide and cover that up. Transparency is so critical at these point of time, especially in the pandemic era which we face today. We reveal much more about ourselves in the way we deal and handle adversities than success. And ultimately, it is the trust you earn and how much you trust others. Both are so critical, because ultimately the workplace has to become permeated with trust, led by someone who has the best interest in the mind. So how to get started? Can I see the next slide, please? Study the behavior of great leaders. This is just a little bit of some takeaways which you can consider. Team focus on teamwork, and also develop 3 good traits. Intense focus on customer needs. Customer is by Bhagwan. Collaboration with colleagues across teams, seniors, colleagues, juniors. I have to involve everybody. I cannot be single-minded internal auditor. It doesn't work in the world ever, and especially in the wide work we live today. We have to work ourselves daily to be inspired and to inspire. Next slide, please. So this I already mentioned. We've already covered this. Come to the next slide. I don't want to take too much time. My takeaways from thoughts which I'm going to talk about very briefly is: be positive. Timeliness is critical. My work ethics have to be my DNA. Persistence and determination. Never give up. And balance with resilience. Basically, listening to me is just the beginning. It must be supported by a continual focus to convert these words into action. Complacency is the enemy of success, and never assume you have arrived. Keep working on it. When success arrives, embrace it, but continue to look for ways to improve, develop, and evolve. Take a long, closer look at the mirrors and ask yourself if you're functioning at your highest level. It's a journey you will never regret. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Suman sir, for enlightening the members and presenting us the qualities and traits of a good internal auditor. I'm sure the members will benefit out of it. And I must say that we, the members of Lucknow Club, are looking forward to learn more from your vast experience in times to come. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mohit, and the entire team.
Let me now take the pleasure of introducing Mr. Siddheshwar Bhalla, the President of IIA Delhi chapter. Popularly, we call him Sid. He has over 17 years of experience in internal audit and risk advisory. In past, Sid was associated with Deloitte, KPMG, EY, BDO, GE, and NMRIG, and is currently partner with Mazars India. Siddheshwar is an active speaker on corporate governance and multiple forums, including Northern India Regional Council of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, NIRC of Institute of Company Secretaries of India, Institute of Directors, Institute of Internal Auditors, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, PhD Chamber of Commerce, Institute of Management Accountants, Estajor, Economic Point, Corp Connect, Corptiv, Bharti Vitta Salakar Samiti, and Department of Public Enterprise. I would request Sid to kindly unveil the Executive Committee of the Lucknow Club. Welcome, Sid.
Thanks a lot, Mohit. And in fact, it's an auspicious day. Good morning to all. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi. And I must say that the time when we were to actually unveil the Executive Committee of the Lucknow Audit Club was 11:40. But personally, I wanted that it should be between 11:50 to 12:10, because that is the auspicious time. And fortunately, we are in that bucket. So I think the stars are favorable for us, and it's indeed an honor for me to introduce the distinguished executive committee members of the Lucknow Audit Club. I will start with the introduction of your president, Mohit Gupta. Mohit, we can go on the next slide, Ajit. Yeah,
we can go to the next slide.
That's the curtain raiser, and I wanted to just have a clip of that. Superb. Mohit is a chartered accountant and qualified IT engineer with around 15 years of experience in the field of internal audit. Currently, Mohit is a director with Mazars, and he's responsible to grow the governance, risk and compliance practice for North India. In past, he's been associated with Genpact, Deloitte, KPMG, and Grant Thornton. Mohit, I would request you if you can address to all the members and share your plans for the Lucknow Audit Club. Welcome on board as the president of the Lucknow Audit Club.
Thanks a lot, Sid. Thanks a lot for this warm introduction. And I'm thankful to the respected BOG members of IIA Delhi chapter and all members of Lucknow Club for their trust and confidence while assigning me with the responsibility to be the president of the Lucknow Club. I would say we all are witnessing unprecedented turbulence in the business and professional world, mainly on account of COVID these days. While we may see this as a threat, but on the other side, this opens up new ways of working and new opportunities for everyone. We all just need to keep pace with the changing time and learn new ways of working to adjust to new normal. While IIA is committed to work on the skill building through regular seminars and training programs, but we equally realize that a lot can be done to support members for exploring professional and employment opportunities in the field of internal audit, risk, and corporate governance. We have taken some initiative through new avatar of Internal Audit Monthly magazine under the leadership of Sana, and the new website we would also be launching soon. Both of these initiatives have indicated the space for addressing this need of the members. Looking forward to serve the profession and work along with all the executive committee members and support all the members of the Lucknow Club. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mohit. Thanks a lot. We have with us an extremely seasoned professional, Mr. Heminder Soni, who is your Vice President for the Lucknow Audit Club. Shri Heminder Soni ji is a fellow member of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, and he's a senior partner of the firm Mrs. KB Saxena and Associates since 2001. He's associated with many state public sector units and government companies as trainer and conducted over 50+ training programs on different topics. He was elected as the council member and remained as chairman of the Professional Development Committee of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, Lucknow. He was also awarded a Shining Star of the Northern Region of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. May I request Shri Heminder ji to share his plans to support the professional colleagues of the Lucknow Audit Club. Heminder ji, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to welcome from Lucknow Club to Tyagarajan sir, Nikhil Kochar sir, Deepak Wadnan sir, Suman Chadha sir, and a special thanks to Siddheshwar sir. In continuation with the vision statement of my president Mohit Gupta ji, my vision is to bridge the gap between the industry, SME, and industry associations and the professional by providing a common platform for interaction and to cater each other needs, and also to make aware. I just want to focus here. I also make aware industry about the need benefits of internal audit and also about the service offering by internal auditors and their benefits and their statutory requirement. This is all my vision on which I have to work with under the guidance of you people, BOGs, past presidents, Siddheshwar sir and Mohit Gupta ji. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Heminder ji. Now I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Rahul Verma as the Secretary for the Lucknow Audit Club. Shri Rahul Verma ji is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and has more than 8 years of standing in the profession. He has rich experience in the field of direct tax, assurance, and litigation, and currently he is the chairman of the Lucknow chapter for the year 2021, Institute of Chartered Accountants. He's been a guest speaker at several forums, especially the Income Tax Training Institute and several banks and universities. He's been a regular writer and contributor in various areas of our profession. May I request Rahul ji to share his plans for capacity building of our internal audit professional colleagues at the Lucknow Audit Club.
Thank you so much, Siddheshwar ji. To begin with, there couldn't be a better day to start and kick off the activities at Lucknow Club than being on the Ganesh Chaturthi day. So as we had a discussion in our meeting with Mohit ji, Hemen ji, UP and Lucknow are the base areas for a lot of MSMEs, and still we have a lot of backdrop is that the MSMEs are not used to internal audit. So we have to bridge the gap. We have to bring them on board and let them be aware of the advantages of what can be the advantages of having a good internal audit. That should be the focus, and that should be the area where we should work. With this vision, I think the Lucknow club will raise to great heights in the days to come. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Rahulji. I now take this opportunity to introduce one of your young and dynamic members of the Executive Committee, Mr. Mohit Vidani, as the Joint Secretary for the Lucknow Audit Club. Mohitji is a graduate from Lucknow University and member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. In past, he's worked with one of the most reputed company in the IT sector, Infosys, and later he became an entrepreneur by establishing his own practice, specializing in internal audits, bank audits, and government audits. May I request Mohitji to share his plans to support the Lucknow Audit Club?
Thank you, Siddheshwarji. First of all, I would like to thank IIA Delhi chapter for giving me this opportunity for this journey. We at IIA are committed for betterment of profession at large. We believe that students are future leaders, and we have come up with the student membership program at a very discounted price. And Mr. Saket ji will be talking in detail about the same. We at Lucknow Club are committed to focus on enhancement of studentship base through partnering various institutions, and also to support students and educate them to CIA certified and help them to get career opportunities in the field of internal audit and risk advisory. I once again congratulate IIA Delhi chapter to come up with this great initiative of launching a club at Lucknow. Thank you, Siddheshwarji.
Thanks a lot, Mohitji. Now I will request your president, Mohit Gupta, to share the detailed roadmap and plans for Lucknow Audit Club for the current year. Over to you, Mohit.
Thanks a ton, Said. We'll just wait for our roadmap to be displayed. So I would like to take the opportunity to share our roadmap for Lucknow Club and high-level themes of activities that we have planned for the Lucknow Club members. I'm glad to share that we started our journey in February 2020 with 19 founding members of the club. We had planned our first event in March 2020 in collaboration with the local chapters of ICW and ICI, but unfortunately that was postponed due to COVID-19 pandemic. But here we are today. This was followed by a series of training programs launched by IIA India and Delhi chapter, and I'm sure most of you would have grabbed the opportunity to attend those webinars. We have introduced altogether a new student member program for which Saket will speak in a while. We have IIA monthly magazine has been launched in its new avatar. We have requested Sana to dedicate a section in the magazine for the members of Lucknow Club. And I would urge all of you to contribute your articles which Sana can publish in the section dedicated for the Lucknow Club members. Thank you, Sana, for that. Regular training programs and seminars would continue to be conducted by IIA India. I would like to mention that training committee is evaluating the pricing model and see how this could be made complimentary for the members or at a very concessional fee. And I'm sure all of you would take huge benefits out of it. In addition, we would conduct a couple of seminars and events every quarter dedicated to the professionals and members from Lucknow, covering the topics most relevant for the professionals at local level. This could relate to the remote auditing techniques, which is most relevant in the current times, joint webinars with participation from the industry at the local level, which can help bridging the gap between the industry and the consultants and the auditors, or the topics relevant to the newer technology or the professional opportunities for which the members can take the benefit out of it. I'm confident that all of you would reap benefits out of this. We would be glad to seek your views and expectations with us when we open the lines for questions or later through emails and phone calls. I can assure you that all your suggestions would be given due consideration, and we would be happy to incorporate them in our future sessions. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all of you for having this club launch. We would now move to our next session on internal audit relevance and opportunities. I would say regulations are changing and new ways of Ajit. Yeah, meanwhile, if you can just open that PPT. Meanwhile, I'll just set the context. I'll say the regulations are changing and the new ways of doing business are evolving every day. Demand for internal auditors is expected to increase annually as organizations continue to expand their audit needs in response to corporate reforms. To talk more on this, I would now like to welcome Shri Hemendra Soni ji and Shri Rahul Verma ji for their session on internal audit relevance and opportunities for professionals. May I welcome you, Hemendra ji and Rahul ji.
Thank you, Mohit ji. Today's topic, on which myself and my colleague Rahul Verma ji will share their views on the topic, the relevance of internal audit and opportunities. It is a very wide area, and itself we know that internal audit is a big domain. And in 30-minute session, we just tried, I along with Rahul ji, will try to touch each and every aspect. We are not going to consider the practical part of it. I'm not discussing an example out because it will go for a long. And I requested, already requested to our President Mohit Gupta to organize a separate program on such as service offering of internal audits or techniques of internal audit, that we launch a series of program on internal audits. And that I hope that request which I have made to my president will be fulfilled soon, and we will launch the series on internal audit. Moving forward, as we all know about internal audit, because all are professional, and Institute of Internal Audit itself is a big name in the field of the internal audits. Internal audit is an independent function which is carried out by internal auditor, which involves risk management, continuous monitoring, accounting, corporate governance. That all depends on the functionality of the company. The audit itself suggests what are the improvements which are to be carried out, what we can add value to the company, which strengthens the functionality of the company, which serves the benefits for the company, and for which company has taken services of ours as an internal auditor. And the role and the responsibility of the internal audit function may vary from organization to organization, company to company, depending on size, depending on dimensions such as turnover, such as production, such as geographical spread. When we see the past trends, it shows that internal audit is taking more on its strategic and central role in the days to come, and it is continuously the same manner. When we see in the current scenario, our focus, companies' focus, government focus is all about the transparency, and which is ultimately increasing the compliance requirement, and which is increasing in an entirely different pace. Continuous changes are coming, continuous transparency focus is there, and which is increasing in different pace, whether it be an internal requirement, whether it be an external requirement. So internal auditor, as an internal audit professional, we have to serve strategically as a strategic advisor. In the recent past, I'm just going through a report which is given by some of the reputed agency, that the fraud in Indian banks indicated that almost 50% of the frauds were detected by internal audit reviews, and this brings into the focus the role of internal auditors in fraud risk management also. And moving on to the first slide, I request Sanaji. The first slide is in front of you. Now this is a second one, Sanaji, previous slide. This is a definition of the internal audit, and we all know about the definition, but few points are highlighted, such as independence, such as add values, and organization operation. When we talk about the independence, what independence means, it may be defined as a freedom from dependence. But as an internal auditor, independence is the freedom from condition that threaten the ability of the internal audit activity or to carry out internal audit responsibility in a very unbiased manner. That's why the internal auditor occupies a very, what we can say is a very unique position in the organization. And when it comes to add value, it shows the scope of internal audit. We can go to any extent to deliver the management. As very rightly highlighted and said by Tyagarajan sir, that we are focusing more on financial part. So we have to focus on quantitative part, and what I feel is there should be some costing essence in internal audit, so that we can focus more on waste management, resource allocation, optimum utilization of resources, capacity utilization, like that, so that we can serve the organization to improve the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance process. Because when we are talking that we are ready to serve the organization to fulfill the objectives of the stakeholders, then we have to touch each and every part of the organization. Next slide. Here it is, the purpose of internal audit. This is shown in a circle, and we can start from anywhere. First purpose is to protect, prevent, or detection. And if we are not new to the organization, detect, prevent, protect, and then prevention. So what's the basic purpose of internal audit, or we can say the role of internal auditor is to bring the deficiencies. Whatever we find should be put in front of the management in a very right time, so that management will be able to take decision, and well in advance decision will be taken to cope up with these threats. Internal auditor identifies what exactly good is, what is bad, or what even is ugly in financial part, in operational part, or in the future plans of the organization. At the same time, we have to tip off the management about the errors, frauds, and misappropriation which are taking or which might be taking in near future. So we have to work like an alarm. We have to work like a CCTV. So we have to work, inform the management well in advance about all the parts which may take place in the organization. It tells, internal audit tells about the health of the process, about the system, about the organization as a whole in its functioning, identifying the root cause of the problem, finding out the ways how we can resolve the problems, and how we can prevent it, so that it can build efficiencies in operation and ultimately save the cost. And when we talk about that saving about the cost, it ultimately affects the profitability of the organization, and we will fulfill the purpose of the stakeholders and the company for the very purpose we are hired. Tanaji, next slide. Here it is. What does an internal audit do? This is a very common question asked by general peoples. I'm not talking about the professional. वो लोग पूछते हैं यार इंटरनल ऑडिट में अपन लोग करते क्या? तो एक जनरल टेंडेंसी है कि यार इंटरनल ऑडिट में we go through the only accounting policies and procedure and all that. Here I just want to share few of the points as per my wisdom, as per my views, what internal audit can do. Internal audit profession has a much broader scope. As I said in my earlier slide, that internal auditor has to act as an eye, as an ear, as a nose, because as we go more and more experience, why I am using the word nose, we get more experience, internal auditor can smell what is going to be happen in organization. So we have to act as an eye, ear, nose of the company's senior leadership or board of directors or management. Internal auditor may cover any area of the organization. However, their work is directed by the audit committee. हम कह सकते हैं कि जो हमसे कहा जाएगा, what is well defined in scope of work, हम वही करेंगे. But internal auditor can do anything which is happening in the organization. There are few points which I mentioned here in the slide. What internal auditor can do, he can evaluate the risk. So internal auditor can provide insights to the business by developing deeper understanding of the business risk, control effectiveness, industry trends, and continuous monitoring capabilities. More and more we go inside the organization, we find different types of issues which are to be resolved or which are resolved, and we have to assess the client's control risk, which means you need to find out about your client's internal control procedure which he is following. Is there is any deficiency in the control system which is used currently and which should be used? If there is any deficiency, we have to mention, we have to bring in the notice of the management, we have to improve the operations, whether the operations are properly conducted, are there any inefficient operations going in the organization which are ultimately increasing the complexities, affect performance, and simultaneously they create hindrance in taking a decision by the management, and which will certainly hurt the objective of the organization. For going through all evaluating risk, assess, control, we have to review each and every process, each and every procedure of the company, either via waste management, either via optimum utilization of resources, either via capacity utilization. In most of the cases, capacity utilization, which affects ultimately the cost of the organization, which affects the profit, must be taken care of. As I earlier mentioned, transparency का जो objective है, that is more increasing, और transparency की वजह से complexity बढ़ रही है, साथ में उनकी compliances बढ़ रही है. Compliances के साथ में हम कहें कि we are more on risk, but they are simultaneously creating the opportunities for the internal auditors. As focus on increasing transparency, compliance requirement is continuously increasing with a different pace. So internal auditor has to be very vigilant. We have to identify shortfalls, deviations in process, and communicate the findings to management so that management can take decision at right time, take corrective measures, find out the alternatives to resolve the problems, so that ultimately the objective can be ascertained. Next. Now, I request my colleague Rahul Lorma ji to share his views on internal audit, a changing landscape. And this is a very new concept which I and Rahul ji, with the consent of Rahul ji, we decided to share our views on different slides so that we can also share and we can learn from the learned panelists and learned speaker like Kochar sir, Tyagarajan sir, Vadwan sir, and Sid sir. So Rahul, now it's up to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving us the broad aspect of why internal audit is now required. Of late, we have seen the scope of internal audit and the nature of audit has drastically changed. In the last 10-15 years, there have been a lot of frauds that have popped up, and the management have been at the other end of receiving it. So internal audit has changed. We have read in our books that auditors are always watchdogs, not bloodhounds. But that concept somewhere is changing now. Why it is changing? Because when you do internal audit, at the root cause, if you at the very start you get the things and you correct them, the things won't get back. So this concept of internal audit has changed. The definition of internal auditing states the fundamental purposes, nature and scope of internal auditing. Internal auditing is an independent, again say independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. As said by Himenji, there are very, there are essential activities that have been there, the essential features of internal audit. So independence, objective assurance, consulting activity, which enhances the organization's operation, is the main objective of internal audit. It helps an organization accomplish its objectives to bring systematic and a disciplined approach, to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance processes. As I earlier said, UP being the hub of MSMEs, we still lag behind a lot because the MSMEs contribute at least 60% of the MSMEs are registered in UP, but still they don't have a concept of a good internal audit. They still don't understand what is the need of an internal audit, and they feel somehow or the other that it's just another way of melting money for the professionals, but it's not the same thing. If you engage a good professional, into your organization to do internal audit, that a penny spent on that professional will bring back you the objective that has been required. So what is changing? We need to understand the operations. Technology as a way of business then support to operations. Higher proportion of white collar and smart workforce. Moving away from physical boundaries of operations, because working has now, we have seen the changing times with COVID. Things have changed. We are not working physically, we are working online. And there are a lot of risks that have been involved in working online, working from home. All those risks can be mitigated to a great extent if we have good controls, good internal audits, good internal audit team. Increasing and changing compliance requirements. The compliances have increased drastically. With this government in force, we expect a lot of more compliances to come. They are more technology driven. They want technology to be driving forward instead of manual interference. So when the manual interference goes away, the system based compliances come. So at that moment of time, you need to have the activities captured at the right moment of time. Otherwise, if you lag behind, the time goes past, there will be a lot of problem in the future to cope up with. What are the objectives that have changed? The customer centric than organization centric. Over the past many years, we have seen growth of organizations like Amazon, Flipkart. A lot of online activities have come up, and those all activities are more balanced towards and more focused towards customer rather than organizations. So with that thing in mind, the internal audit change is very much required. Manage recessions, deficits, manage corruptions, more stringent regulatory norms, fast growth at cost of comprising controls, increasing social responsibility, environmental health and safety, higher volatility in stakeholders' confidence. So these are the objectives. We have discussed operations, objectives, and what are the risks involved in internal audit. Fraudsters have access to more data. As we have already said that we are working from home, the works have changed. So we are more prone to activities where fraudsters can attack. So if you have a good control mechanism set up and a good internal audit team working for it, the fraud level can be lowered down a great extent. The social media has increased dramatically and has taken over the lives of everyone. So even employees in the social media can post anything that can cause a lot of risk to the organization. Higher interconnected dependencies coupled with lower controls, compromising segregation of duties under COVID, and financial instabilities. So these are the things that have changed the internal audit concepts. Can we please go on to the next slide? So we have discussed about what all have changed. Now we discuss about what all can be the various operating models for internal audit. outsourcing, co-sourcing models. So when we start with it, the first model is the in-house model. When the organization tends to develop their own internal audit team and they don't want to outsource the activities, they get their own activities prepared, their own staff to work on to it. It is the first model, that is the in-house model. The second model is the co-source model, where some employees from the organizations are paid, and the activities are also taken care by some outside professionals. It's a co-source model on which internal audits is worked on. Then we move to third model, that is in-house with outsource supervision. The audit being conducted in-house by the internal staff only, but the supervision is given control to some other professional outside the organization for a brighter and more transparent sort of an activity. And the fourth model is fully outsourced, which according to a lot of activities have been taking place. The lot of organizations are going to this fully sourced outsourced model, especially the MNCs and the companies. But still we have a lot of activities to capture, because the bank sectors, we have a lot of banking sectors, they are not moving towards internal audit, they are going with their own staff doing the audits. We find that thing, I will not name the bank, but the thing we noticed that there was a bank, a big public sector bank, which was having an in-house internal audit staff. The branch was then allotted to some other chartered accountant for audit, and what we found was something that was very fishy. So it is always good to have a balance of the things, either full outsource or in-house with outsource supervision is the model for the internal audit. I would now request Himenji to please take up the next slide.
Thank you, Rahul, for sharing your views on the different aspects of the internal audit relevance. Here is the key drivers of framework in internal control value chain. To strengthen the overall internal control environment of the organization, the role of internal audit is to access and provide suggestions or recommendation to improve all the three important pillars. These are the three important pillars. One is governance, second one is operation, and third one is financial reporting and compliance. And what I feel, this particular slide must be converted into a full day program on which we can talk about. But today, governance topic is to be taken over by our respected Sid sir. But still, I will talk a little bit on one by one on different topics. As governance is what? It is all about the direction and control of the organization. And it is related to the formulation of strategies, policies, rules, guidelines, guidance, which are set by the top management. And the objective behind setting all this is to smooth the operations of the organization to achieve whatever management has decided or vision and will be done on a mission setup for the organization. As an internal audit professional, it is our duty to suggest improvement in the areas of governance framework, either a legal framework or risk management framework, to make the organization more stronger or protect the organization to avoid surprises. Second is finalize lines of defense and aspects to be covered on each line of defense. And this is already I have mentioned that it's a wide area on which Mohit Gupta ji will throw more light on in the programs to come. But there are three line of defense, that is we can take it as automation for the first line of the organization. To get it automated, more and more organizations are automating the work of the first line and using the result, and most importantly, the discrepancies in the result as a feed for the third line for the work. And the second is integration and recognition by the business and shifting to the cloud. shifting to the cloud means it can't count the number of times that we have told the information of enterprise risk to be a very critical. Moving on to the second pillar of internal control value chain, which is operations. As an internal audit professional, our first step is to understand, as I mentioned earlier, more deeper you go, more you understand the process, more you learn, and more you find out the ways, find out problems, and so that you can take decision, you can inform the management where the problem exists, what are the business problems, then you are in a position to evaluate risk involved in it, and amount of control which is required for each and every area. And we have to comment, or we have to bring in the notice of the management about the design control system, whether they are operating effectively or not. A gap, we have to find out if there is any gap or deviation. Review must be highlighted to management immediately, that management has to take necessary action. For example, we can take a chief of operation might have some concern about the wrong information which is provided to customer by the sales team, or similarly a finance head might raise question related to mismatch of something in invoices and good delivery notes. In this case, it needs a proper review of the process. So review of the process is the most important part of it, because more and more we understand the process, we can find out where the wastage is, where operations are not effectively performing, where is inefficiencies, where is ineffectiveness, so that we can reduce them, we can eliminate them to achieve the objective. And coming on to the third pillar, that is financial reporting and compliance, we have to identify the areas for improvement and reducing financial reporting risk, eliminate redundant controls, segregation of duty, automate financial reporting related controls. And as I told me, financial reporting becomes more and more tougher in the days to come. Sanaji, can we have a next slide, please? And now I request again Rahulji to throw some light on. Sanaji, next slide, please.
Can you move to the next?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. I guess there is some issue, technical issue. Yeah. So we quickly move on to the service offerings by the internal audit professionals. As we have seen, the internal audit has evolved and the internal audit profession has evolved a great deal. So now there are a lot of service offerings that can be offered by the internal audit professionals. Internal audit, as we all know, is the old school work that everybody is aware of. The new activities that have cropped up are enterprise risk management. Enterprise risk management is a very important aspect where the businesses try to evade that risk and achieve the goals that they want to achieve. The risk and control assessment, assessing the risks that are involved in the business processes and their control and mitigation is an important work that is now been entrusted with the internal audit professionals. The SOX compliance, developing standard operating procedures. It's again a very important thing for any organization to develop where the organization is working seamlessly over a large period of a large area of geographically, where you're working remotely. You have to comply with all the standard SOPs that have been laid by the company. So that is another very important aspect and a work where these internal audit professionals can be engaged and can work upon. the legal and compliance framework. We all know the legality and the compliance works have grown many folds with GST, with every sort of compliance that is coming up every day. There is a two compliances a day that the professionals are managing. So that legal and compliance framework is another very important aspect that internal audit professionals can look up and can work and provide their services to the organization. Forensics and fraud risk assessment, another very important thing. Forensics and fraud risk assessment is an activity that can be taken and can be worked upon by the professionals very diligently. It's a new area of work where not a lot of people are working, the professionals are working with the backward calculation, the forward calculation, the fraud risk assessment where the fraud has taken place, with internet working where the workings have been taking place online. There are a lot of chances of frauds cropping up. So this is another very important aspect and very important area where the internal audit professionals can come up and can help the businesses grow. Contract compliance and third-party risk management, another very important aspect where the compliances are undertaken by the internal audit professionals when the third-party risk management is being conducted by them. Business process diagnostic review, another very important thing. You have to learn and you have to understand where the business process is not working properly. So when you need to understand this thing, the internal audit professionals and the professionals can work onto it, can help the organizations grow, because if one faulty business process is there, the whole organization will suffer. All the other processes will go to a jump and you will not be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So these are the service offerings by an internal audit professionals. Can we move on to the next slide? I would request Hemenji to please take up the next slide.
Internal audit statutory requirement. This is a very general question. I again said, especially in case of a state in which we are, अपन जब कहीं जाते तो पूछते हैं अगर स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिटर है तो दे यूज्ड टू से हाँ यार ये कराना ही है. But here I want to mention what are the statutory requirement of the internal auditor. As per the section 138 of the Indian Companies Act, the following are the companies which shall required to appoint an internal auditor or a firm of internal auditors. If we take an example of every listed company, if we take an example of listed company, then it is always applicable. And when we move on to unlisted public company, so there are certain criteria on the fulfillment of which internal audit is applicable. For example, in case of unlisted company, as it is already mentioned in the slide, paid up share capital of 50 crore rupees or more during the preceding financial year, or second classification also on the basis of turnover, it must be 200 crores or more. These are during the year, but in case of outstanding loan and outstanding deposit, it is at a particular point of time. There is a big difference. The outstanding loan or borrowings from bank or from any public financial institution, the amount if exceeds from 100 crore or more at any point of time during the preceding year. And similarly, in case of outstanding deposit, the amount is 25 crores at or more at any point of time during the preceding financial year. And in case of private company, only turnover and the amount of loan is the criteria on the applicability of the internal audit. The turnover must be 200 crores and outstanding loan is 100 crores or more at any point of time, with the certain restriction and conditions. Coming on to the next slide, Rahulji.
Yes, moving along to the next slide, risk management. What are the statutory requirements and its benefits? See, there are certain inlaid things in the Companies Act 2013 where the various sections provide for statutory requirements have been laid in. Section 134 of the Companies Act says that the board of directors must report and include a statement indicating development and implementation of a risk management policy for the company, including identification of elements of risk, if any, which in the opinion of the board may threaten the existence of a company. So there are requirements in the Companies Act itself which are mandatory to be complied with by the company. So risk management, section 134. Moving along, section 177, the audit committee shall act in accordance with the terms of reference specified in writing by the board, which shall inter alia include evaluation of risk management systems. So as we have already seen in the last slides, that what are the services being offered. Risk management was one of the services that was offered by the internal audit professionals, and it is a laden thing in section in the Companies Act by various sections, where the company has to report that the risk management has been conducted and done by the company or not. Schedule 4, independent directors should satisfy themselves that the system of risk management are robust and defensible. So these are the three broad sections wherein the statutory requirements have been laid in the Companies Act, and the company has to comply with it. So moving along with it, what are the key benefits of enterprise risk management? See, there are various benefits of enterprise risk management. We have only written over here 6 of them. Brand protection. Well, if you have a good enterprise risk management, the brand always grows, and the people who are your customers, they'll always be engaged to the brand because they know that the risk management and the objects and the processes have all been taken care by the company. Value protection. The company and its values always been taken care of.
Can you take this so that
Hemenji, your mic is not muted. Please mute the mic. Okay, thank you. Assist achieving organizational goals. It's another very important key benefit, that it helps the organization achieving the organizational goals it has set up for the employees, for the customers. Improves stakeholder confidence and trusts. Again, a very important thing, when you are having a good enterprise risk management, the stakeholders will always keep a confidence on the company, and they'll trust what the company is doing. Informed decisions. You will have a very good decision-making process, will be swift, and the people will be knowing that the company is working in the right direction. And it also reduces surprises. So it's a very important thing. You are not out of the blocks. Nothing is going to come out to you, and you will be in a ray of mid of a thing. So it reduces surprises. So continuous risk monitoring can assist company in anticipating the risk and effectively responding to uncertain future events. Can we please move on to the next slide? So the next slide says about internal financial controls and what are the statutory requirements. Fortunately or unfortunately to say, but what I have seen in the profession, that internal financial control is a part of the report, but it has just been taken as a copy-paste thing. But it is not such. You will have to understand that there is a professional opportunity for everything. If you go on and tell the company that there is a requirement that you have to fulfill, and that will help you and help your company to grow, it will definitely be a good professional opportunity for every professional in the field. So internal financial controls, there is a statutory requirements. Board of directors lay down adequate and effective IFCs and include it in the director's responsibility statement as per the Companies Act. Independent directors to satisfy themselves on the strength of internal financial controls. The audit committee is also being laden with it. They have to evaluate the IFC systems. They have to review auditors' comments, observations, whether there is any observation which is in the companies had to answer them. Review auditors' comments, observation with respect to controls before submission to the board. Discuss issues with the management or internal statutory auditors. Auditors report on adequacy of IFC system. That's what I'm saying. There's the point that the people just take it for granted, that it is only for reporting that you have to report. But mind it's a thing that we need to understand, that there is a professional opportunity into it. If we go on and get the things done in a swift manner, that will definitely come good for the company and for the profession as well. Auditors will have to report on the adequacy of IFCs, report on operating effectiveness of such controls. IFC to be included in director's responsibility statement since it has been made compulsory from 31st March 2015 onwards, and statutory auditors reports from the year 31st March 2016 onwards. So internal financial controls are also a statutory requirement that has to be complied by almost everyone, every company. I'll request for the next slide and will request Himenji to please take up the next slide.
This is a very general question nowadays in the minds of everyone कि आप लोग यार ऑडिट कैसे कर रहे हो इस लॉकडाउन में, आप घर पर बैठे हो या पार्शियल लॉकडाउन चल रहा है. तो there are general types of tools which we are using it and everyone is using it, and this slide is self-explanatory. And either type of audit, either be an internal audit or concurrent or compliance audit or cost audit, whatever it is, how can we conduct it by what we can say without our physical presence? So we have to review of the financial transaction on regular basis, because we are talking about the concurrent audit by obtaining records through emails, data sharing tools. There are so many data analysis tools which helps the professional to make sense of the data collected. We can talk about R programming, we can talk about Tableau Public, Python and all that. We can perform test checking, a substantial checking of the transactions using analytical tools. Weekly reports we can demand, we can prepare monthly reports, demand on emails, or we can use screen sharing devices, leveraging audio-visual apps for organizing a remote connect session. And similarly, in case of internal audit, we can do the same, evaluate companies' internal control, operational or financial by obtaining record through email or data sharing tool, etc. A test design transaction using data analytics. This is all about the technological updation, automation, how equipped we are, how infrastructure is developed, and how better we can use the technology to make it easier as it thinks difficult in the cases. Review of the organization, adherence, performing test design, we can all discuss it about. Next slide, Sanaji. Now I request our President Mohit Gupta ji to please share his views on the career or internal audit, because I have to go on a very urgent call. Then I'm just taking excuse and sorry Mohit ji, I have to go on a very urgent call and I will connect within 5 to 6 minutes. Please excuse and just share your views on the career of the internal audit. Sir, can I?
Thank you so much, Hemendra ji and Rahul ji. Sir, thank you so much.
I will join within 5 minutes. Within
sure,
5
sure,
minutes.
Please carry on. I know you have that committee. Sure. Thank you. But I would want to thank you and Rahul ji for appraising all professionals with the option of opportunities lying in front of them as intern professionals. And as you just presented in the last slide, do we presume that on the account of COVID pandemic and when the professionals are not going on ground, and as we generally perceive that for the purpose of internal audit we need to travel, do we see whether the opportunities will reduce? And I'll say no. And you rightly mentioned that there are a lot of tools available and the professionals are leveraging technology to a large extent, and most of the work, and I'll say in my experience I've seen more than even 90% of the work can be done remotely using these technologies, and we all as a professionals can take a lot of advantage and while performing our services. And we are committed to have a detailed session in all these techniques and all the service offerings. But on this slide, I want to quickly narrow down and see what is the ocean of opportunities and why a person should look for a career in internal audit. As Suman sir mentioned about his leadership skills, a person can develop, be a good communicator. He develops a lot of analytics abilities, and that this profession helps building a professional, developing his personality and become a good professional in all scheme of themes. Also, the opportunity is not only local, these are global as well. The global, the MNCs comes into the India and they're looking at the internal auditors, how they look at the processes, help them establish a good corporate governance framework so that the organizations who are working in a multiple countries can run on a smooth manner. So that's some of it. And as an internal auditor, you gain an in-depth knowledge and understanding of the processes. It's not limited only to the accounting. You understand how an organizations work in an integrated manner, and the entire knowledge base of a professionals gets enhanced to a next level. But last not the least, and I'm sure the remunerations are relatively good, because this is a profession which is not exploited by many of the professionals, and there's an ocean of opportunities lying in front of all of us, and I would say all of you to grab this with both the hands. So that's pretty much on the relevance and the professional opportunities in the field of internal audit. But before we go to the next session, I would want to request Deepak sir to kindly share his experience on art of internal auditing. Deepak sir, maybe if you could share 2 minutes your experience on the art of internal audit. Maybe some problem at his hand, and it's already 12:50. So I know all of you are eagerly waiting to listen to the wonderful speaker and torch bearer of IIS Delhi chapter BOG. So I won't take much time and would request Siddeshwar Bhallaji for his session on role of internal auditor in corporate governance, and maybe we listen to the Deepak ji just after this session. Sid, welcome to you, and over to you.
Thanks a lot, Mohit. See, you rightly said that we have a bit overshot on the time. I think we had eloquent speakers a while back, and Suman sir, Deepak sir, both Heminder ji, Rahul ji, they spoke quite well. And obviously we overshot on time, so you can understand the challenge which I have right now. That there is plethora of knowledge that has already been shared, and how do I weave it in a string and then share it with all of you? Hello. What, somebody is wanting to address you, I believe. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, Ajit Asana, and you can have the complete animated ones there. See, before I actually plunge into the role of internal auditor in corporate governance, I did feel that we should share in terms of what actually corporate governance is. But before that, I would actually want you to think why an organization is created. Let's forget internal audit for the time being of corporate governance. Let's just think through why an organization is there. There is a vision and a mission statement, but perhaps, to my knowledge, very few of the internal audit professionals look at it. But believe me, it's of paramount importance. The vision and the mission of any organization, and accordingly a strategy is set. There are some objectives which the organization wants to meet. Let's take an example here. An organization, and let's take an example for the sake of simplicity, manufacturing is a large sector. Now, in a manufacturing company, if the objective is that we want to double the turnover in next, say, 3 years, we want to double the turnover in the next 3 years, what sort of strategy does it need to have to accomplish that sort of an objective? The strategy could be acquire companies, go for joint ventures. Can I request all to please put it on mute? I think there is some disturbance on the background. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So the objective of the company to have the turnover double in the next, say, 3 years, just as an example we are taking. Now, how does it happen? The strategy is, okay, we'll go in for some acquisitions, we'll go in for some joint ventures, we'll actually improve the production capacity of the company so that we can achieve that sort of thing. Is that enough? No, that's not enough. There is the concept which I call as a PPC, the people, processes, or actually it should be called the policies and procedures, and cyber. These three things. People are the most important, I would say, foundation in any organization. It can never be undermined. Whether it is in the nature of board of directors, it is in the nature of, so we look at the complete organization structure of an organization, the board of directors, audit committee members, the first level defense line, which we normally say the people who are executing it, the oversight functions, internal auditors, statutory auditors, all of those who are contributing, that's the element of people which is there. The policies and procedures, what has to be done by a finance function, what is to be done by a marketing function, what should a legal function do, what is the role of a production, how is it all synchronized, how all the functions are getting synchronized in terms of the inputs and outputs from the functions, not the production input output, but one output of a particular function, how it is getting an input in the other function. All of it becomes extremely important. We used to call it technology, but today I think it is cyber, which becomes extremely important at the same time. When we say cyber, today you talk about accounting. We have a blockchain accounting which has come out. You talk about the IoT of the world. The technology is getting so advanced that today, if we exclude cyber from all of these concepts or foundations, I think we definitely cannot look at governance in a typical and an accurate way. Now let's come back when we've talked about the people, the policy, procedures, and the cyber part of it. What does corporate governance mean? And if you just read through also the first line, it says broadly refers to the mechanisms and processes by which corporations are controlled and directed. Who controls, who directs is the people at the top, the board of directors. What do they control? It is actually the organization structure. What an organization structure should look like. Do I really need a legal function? Do I need a finance function? Do I need, it's by default that we feel that we need all these functions, and maybe rightly so. But times are changing. Do I need it in-house? Do I need it outsourced? The concept is moving towards outsourced. What is the role of auditors over there? We spoke about auditors as in-house, outsourced and all, but what is the role of auditors when they look at the people, when they look at the policies and procedures, and they look at the cyber part of it? Everything gets engulfed as part of internal audit. Tone from the top, extremely important. But what is set as a tone from the top? Should there be checks and balances in place? A sequence of, so it's a process. Finance function, for instance, is a function. There are a lot of activities that are happening within the finance function. While the activities are happening, some of the activities are control-based activities, certain are routine activities. The control-based activities are actually those checks and balances to look at it, that what has been stated as a tone from the top, so that we can achieve the objectives and have the vision and mission of the organization in place and achieve that within the time bound, is something what corporate governance actually talks about it. Can we just go to the next slide, Ajit Sana? You look at the cornerstones of this corporate governance. Frame in your mind an organization structure. You'll have the board of directors. Board of directors, a carve out of that is the audit committee, which has been talked about. Section 177 talks about under the Companies Act 2013. So audit committee is one of the important cornerstones of corporate governance. Internal audit, which actually reports to the audit committee, the chair of the audit committee. The senior management, executive management, again, is in charge of what has been deliberated, discussed in the boardroom, how is it getting percolated down, and each and every activity which is being done by any individual in the organization, any one of them. You pick an example of any individual and I can relate it to you how it will contribute to the overall objectives of the organization. And then you have the stat audit, which is an independent assurance, again, from an external perspective. So these are the cornerstones of corporate governance. Thematically, this is what corporate governance would be. Now what I'll be talking about, and I believe me, we can take half a day session on each of the themes which I'll be talking about, but I will just be touching a tip of the iceberg, and I'll try to justify as far as possible so that it's not Greek, but at the same time assure you that in the coming weeks, in the coming months, we will organize more trainings and cover each of those aspects. Can we go to the next slide, please? Whilst we have spoken about the corporate governance, how has the era of corporate governance in India specifically looked like? And I would actually take you back 30 years. Why 30 years? Because that was the time, that was a juncture when things started changing. Seamlessly, we have seen a lot of things changing. Remember 1991, 1992, when the talks around globalization of the Indian economy was talked. Before 1991 era, it was largely the public sectors, the government companies. But today, if you look at it, you've got private sector come out. There's a globalization impact which is there. We'll talk about COVID in a while, we'll talk about some pandemics in a while. But at the same time, I think the geographical boundaries have collapsed. Yeah, it's all one at the end of the day. The first sectors to get opened was the banking sector. Gradually, we saw the automobile sector getting opened. And today, if we see any sector, it has actually got opened. Now, if the sectors have got opened, there is a lot of jobs that have come up, the people part of it. There are systems and procedures that have been set. Cyber is the buzz today. What has happened in terms of the frameworks for corporate governance which an organization should have? And I won't go back 30 years, but I'll definitely go back 2 decades, because there has been a lot from that time which has been done. And as you see it on the slide, you'll find that there were a lot of white papers which came up. Confederation of Indian Industries, Kumar Mangalam Birla Committee, Naresh Chandra Committee, Narayan Murthy Committee, the Department of Company Affairs, all of these, they came up with white papers. They said, what should an organization look at when they talk about corporate governance? What should be the role of an audit committee? What should be the role of an internal auditor? What is to be seen? What is to be focused on more? But they were all recommendatory in nature. They were all recommendatory in nature. And any organization is either a listed organization or an unlisted organization. We can just simply bucket it in these two because that's how the Companies Act 2013 also now talks about it. And internal audit is actually looking at all of those companies. There was clause 49 which came up in the year around 2000. And that was the first time when something mandatory came up, not recommendatory, but mandatory. What did it say? It actually talked about 7 things. But here we'll focus just on one as of now. That's not internal audit. That's actually, they said that any company which is listed on the Indian Stock Exchange, then as per the listing agreement which the company has with the stock exchange, SEBI is the oversight for that, then clause 49 of that particular agreement spelled out 7 things to be done. What should be a composition of the board of directors, audit committee? Is there a legal compliance framework? Is there a risk management framework in the organization? What is the MIS framework in the organization? And specifically, it talked about internal controls over financial reporting, ICOFR. So we call it as ICOFR. I will explain that also in a while, but before that, I'll say time passed by, there were amendments made to this clause 49, and the landmark change which came was 2013 Companies Act. The internal financial control, which my distinguished speakers have spoken about a while back, Heminder ji and Rahul ji. They said IFC. What does IFC actually talk about? Internal financial control. Yes, it does say there are 3 sections which under the Companies Act talks about IFC, which is your section 134, 143 and 177, which has already been talked about. But conceptually, what is IFC? How has the bar of governance from a recommendatory to a mandatory mode moved over a period of time? Let me give you an example over here in terms of what is ICOFR, internal controls over financial reporting, and what is IFC? What's the distinction between the two? And where is internal audit getting fit in the whole scheme of things? Because when we look at the definition of internal audit, we say internal control. We don't say actually ICOFR or IFC over there. But let's take an example. I took an example of a manufacturing, so we'll stick to that. There is an invoice against a particular material that is received after authorization by the user. It comes to the finance function. What does the finance function do? It says, okay, there is this material which has come in against a goods received note, which is a control point. There is a rate which got fixed against a purchase order. Yeah, so the procurement department is also got involved over there. And when you multiply these 2 things, there is a amount that needs to be paid. Apart from other checks, segregation of duties and maker-checker controls, the invoice gets processed. What has actually happened in this scheme of things is there is an internal control over what needs to get reported as part of that invoice processing in the books of account. That is internal control over financial reporting. And this is an example on the finance function. Similarly, you can have an example in the order to cash cycle, in the hire to retire, any function you pick up, you can have that example because everything will converge in the finance function. Let's extend this example further and go into the operational areas of business. There is a rate that got determined, which was picked up by the purchase order while the invoice was getting processed. How did that rate got determined? That rate actually got determined based on a procurement methodology, a policy and a procedure document which the organization had framed. Should we go in for 3 quotes? Should we go in for a tender, open tender, limited tender? What sort of a tendering mechanism? Or should we have a just-in-time buy without any quote, an exceptional approval? So whatever it was done, it was actually to do so that you have the optimum price, apart from other things, the optimum price which is there. That means you've gone into the operational area of business, the procurement function, the CNP function, and you're trying to see is the rate that has got fixed or determined the optimum one or not, and which the finance function is actually looking at it from an ICOFR angle. So when you extend these checks further into the operational areas of business and look at the efficiency of the operations, efficiency of the other functions in which they are operating, in which they are functioning, is internal financial control. Now look at it. In 2000, you had listed companies to give a certificate on internal control over financial reporting. The bar of governance got raised in 2013, covering all the companies, whether listed or unlisted. IFC is applicable to all. And I'll take a separate session someday on IFC because there are some threads into it, but just for the purposes of our discussion here, it's applicable to all. That means you have extended the checks which are to be performed in the operational areas of business. Now further extend this example by saying that there is an indent or a requisition that was raised by the user whether the product or the item is needed or not, whether it is required, and there was a justification also against it that yes, it is required because the stock is out and there is a production which is to go on and all that type of stuff. That indent part, if it is not linked at that time to the budget, is actually part of the internal control environment as a whole. Internal auditors look at the internal control systems in an organization. That means anything or everything that is happening is part of it. When we say ICOFR, internal controls over financial reporting, it's only a component. Just for the academic discussion, it's only a component of the complete internal control environment. When we say IFC, internal financial control, it's a larger component. But there are overlaps. There are overlaps in both the things. It's not that ICOFR is only to do with the finance function. It's equally to do with the production and other procurement function and all. But the coverage that is to be seen has got further strengthened, further improved. And that's how the bar of governance through regulations has actually got impetus in India over a period of time. In 2015, this clause 49 now, which is called LODR, Listing Obligation and Disclosure Requirements, this also underwent a change. So the certificate for listed companies which it has to give, the CEO, CFO certificate which it has to give to the stock exchange, was for internal controls over financial reporting, which still continues. But the review by the audit committee is no more ICOFR. It is IFC now after the Companies Act 2013. And that's the change which has got in 2015. So that's how the governance in terms of through regulations has also got improved over a period of time. And internal auditors' role cuts across all of it. You talk about GST, we will say GST, goods and service tax, is actually to do with tax. If you ask me and go into the genesis of what GST or a goods and service tax, it is actually improving your processes and systems. Today, if your purchase order doesn't state the GST number, you will somewhere face a challenge in terms of your input credit at a later point of time. The nuances of GST would be different, but the objective is that you must have a good master record created. When I say master record of your vendors, master record of your customers, master record of your employees, all the different masters an organization needs to have. Specifically for GST, it will more do with the customers and the vendors which is there. So GST is actually also putting an impact in impetus on the good systems an organization should have. KYC just being one of them. Then came a point of time when the Quota Committee recommendations came. It's further more robust, but it's to do with a larger governance around the audit committee's role, compositions, how an organization should work at a more entity level. Yeah. So each one of these, if you ask me, can actually have a separate session where we can discuss, deliberate, threadbare on each one of these. But from just to touch the tip of the iceberg, I would say let's stick to this, that how the era of corporate governance in India has been. We'll go now into slight specifics of internal audit, because here the role of internal auditor in the corporate governance is being talked about. We've seen what corporate governance is, how and why an internal auditor should actually look at a strategy of an organization and link it to the vision and mission, and just not focus on the processes, whether it's a finance or a marketing or a legal function or any function which is subjected to an audit. And each and every function is actually subjected to an audit over there based on risk assessment which is done. Can we please go to the next slide? Is internal audit just a recommendatory thing or a mandatory thing? We saw a while back Himenderji and Rahulji were presenting section 138 of the Companies Act 2013 that it is mandatory depending on the turnover criteria, depending on the deposits and other criteria which were there on the capital of a particular company. But is that all? It is. From an Indian context, it is. But today, we've seen the globalization impact is there. What if a company which is listed on the New York Stock Exchange or a NASDAQ is present in India? like we have IFC in India, we have a Sarbanes-Oxley in US. And Sarbanes-Oxley goes on a materiality level, and it could be that the entity which is in India, because of a particular materiality threshold, it gets subjected to SOX. So what is SOX? SOX is actually looking at the internal controls again. We won't go into those specifics. And similarly, what is JSOX? JSOX is if you're listed on the Japanese stock exchange and you have so many companies which have come in India, Japanese company listed over there. So JSOX is also applicable, something like a IFC. Similarly, you've got IFRS. Today, is it that an internal auditor is not supposed to know IFRS? It is. If you're doing a banking, Basel II norms are something which you need to know. Similarly, Ind AS. Ind AS, if I see to it, in 2015 June, there was a notification by MCA which said that all the books of accounts of organizations, and depending on the criteria of the Ind AS which is there, they need to be Ind AS compliant. All those things have been talked about. The director's responsibility statement. Yeah. Again, section 134 of the Companies Act talks about it, and there are things under IFC which gets included as DR under director's responsibility statement, which again, so if you look at the internal auditor's role, it's actually to do with controls, systems, and each one of these, whether it's a Sarbanes-Oxley, whether it's an IFC or a ICOFR or a GDPR or a clause 49, which is LODR now, Ind AS, it's all covered as part of it. Today, and I don't want to actually just say this to frighten any one of you, but I think as internal auditors, the responsibility, the accountability towards the organization, towards the stakeholders, internal or external, is extremely critical and important. If so, there are concepts and sections around 448, I think, which is on the fraud, which is talked about under the Companies Act. What is fraud actually at the end of the day? It's an act of connivance where you're trying to fail the control mechanism of an organization. Why an internal auditor cannot be questioned? It can be. But does the law have that much of teeth today to ask the internal auditors? It does have. Believe me, it does have. The stat auditors may be getting exposed, but I think equally the internal auditors are also accountable and responsible. And it does get questioned over there. So we need to be extremely careful. We need to be conceptually clear. We need to have a risk-based audit. Things have moved beyond risk-based audit, and as I go along in the slides, I'll share that with you, but we need to definitely look at the risk-based concepts also at the same time. So there is a regulatory change. The landscape of regulations are changing, and I think it is definitely putting an impetus around how the role of internal auditors have to be seen. What are they supposed to look at? The first question normally, and based on my experience, I can share with you, most of us are internal auditors over here. The first question any audit committee or a board of directors will ask is all safe? Is all good? Is there a fraud which is happening? Are they wrong in asking that? I don't think they're wrong in asking that, because we as internal auditors are cutting across the organization. We are not restricted to any one function at the end of the day. So as a governance, while we are looking at it, we are actually the extended arms of the audit committee. And so to say, even the board of directors. The appointments are also now being subjected to the BOD approval of internal auditors. So we can see the criticality of the role the internal auditors are playing in today's times. Can you go to the next slide, please? Traditionally, if you ask me, and this is something which slide which I have carved out, pointed out on my own. You can say it's more like a signature slide. We've always seen internal auditors are doing what? They are looking at compliance. And traditionally, it was always being felt, it was always being elaborated that it is compliance to policies and procedures. Is that all? No, it's not all. Policies and procedures, very critical, important. Entity level policies and procedures and functional level policies and procedures. Code of ethics, delegation of authority, POSH, corporate policies at an entity level. The internal auditors are supposed to look at it. I am not sure how many times internal auditors look at all those things, but it is important, it is critical, because someday some fraud or something happens, everything comes on the ground then. Standard operating procedures, functional levels. Again, that's an entity level control, but at the end of the day, the functional standard operating procedures are also to be seen. Notifications, circulars, if you go into a public sector or a government company, I think you cannot undermine the importance of circulars and notifications also at the end. But that's only one pillar of the compliance. The second is the statutory and regulatory. Now, to have a look at the statutory and regulatory is actually to see at an entity level, does an organization have a legal compliance framework? Now, the term, three-word term, legal compliance framework seems good, seems quite fancy, but what will it constitute? Are the various laws attractive to any organization documented somewhere, whether in a Excel or in a tool, doesn't matter, but is it documented? Are the critical provisions in each of those laws highlighted? The criticality will not be a high, medium, low, but depending on the imposition of penalties, whether it will revoke some sort of licenses, whether it will lead to some penal provisions in terms of penalties, in terms of imprisonments, those type of things, it becomes extremely critical. Who are responsible across the organization to look at those the compliances to those requirements which are there? What if a particular law changes? How proactive is an organization to address and to immediately act on a particular change in the law? Can it even identify that? That's a legal compliance framework which is being talked about along with the timelines and all. But from an internal audit perspective, at an entity level, at an organization level, is something which is need to be seen. But if you go to the finance function, you will look at the specific acts on a test check basis. Is it compliant or not? Learnings from global, one of the learnings under the JSOX, a Japanese Sarbanes-Oxley, it clearly gives what? It says if the entity level controls in an organization are robust, the operational level controls or the substantive checks can be reduced, and vice versa. Same holds good for Sarbanes-Oxley as well. And I think in terms of risk-based audits that we do, same thing holds good for us. Financial reporting, is it only the prerogative of the statutory auditors? I don't think. Traditionally, if you ask me, internal auditors were also conceived to be that, okay, they will only look at the finance function and not into the operational areas. I think with the coming up of all these internal control frameworks through JSOX, SOX, internal control over financial reporting, IFC, it has actually become important. These are all financial reporting norms at the end of the day. But it is to do with control. It is to do with the internal auditor. Indian accounting standards, Ind AS, US GAAP, IFRS, all of it is again part of it financial reporting. Depending on which area of a particular company or which function is being looked into, all these things get covered. Contractual terms, contractual compliance is extremely important. What are the obligations, the contractual obligations, commercial, financial, regulatory angle? When a company enters into a contract, because that's where the litigation happens and that's where the processes are being questioned later. So are we proactively looking at the contractual compliances also? Are we seeing there are SLAs, the service level agreements, which are actually embedded in those contractual agreements? And who is actually looking at all those SLAs are being met or not? Is again something which the internal auditors are supposed to look at it from a good governance angle. The world is actually moving towards outsourcing. The in-house functions, not only audit, but most of the in-house functions are getting outsourced. With the pandemic, and COVID is one of the pandemics, I think the storyline towards outsourcing has become prominent, because for whatever reasons, for whatever cash flow reasons and all, but it has become prominent. What sort of a control is there when you actually outsource a particular function? The Committee of Sponsoring Organizations, POSO 2017 now, specifically talks about controls or what should be a review mechanism when an outsourcing happens. Yeah, it actually talks about fraud and all those things also, but I think that's again at a later point when we talk about those things. So that means if you look at the compliance, once we say that auditors are only looking at compliance, they are only looking at a post facto. Unfortunately, the post facto is also no more there. It's, I think, more becoming concurrent. With the change in the 3 lines of defense, I think it is quite evident. The technology has actually replaced the first line of defense. It has actually changed the definition of the first line of defense, if you ask me. The IoT of the world, the Internet of Things of the world has changed that. And I think that's where the role of internal auditors also has to get aligned in terms of coverage and all. But in a while, we'll talk something more about it. Can we go to the next slide? Internal auditors look at internal controls. So there is a control side and there is a risk side, 2 sides of the same coin. Here we are not talking about risk as of now, we are talking about control. We will talk about risk also, like a while back, enterprise risk management and functional level risk and all those things were being said, but I think let's stick to controls over here. ELC, what are the controls in an organization which cut across It's not restricted to a particular function, but cuts across. An organization, does it have an enterprise risk management, which again, my distinguished speakers, co-speakers were talking a while back. There are regulations also attracted to that. What actually is the enterprise risk management is a very detailed and a vast subject. But just to quickly summarize, is it just having a risk management policy documented? No, it's not. Unfortunately, it is not. Any organization, is it having a risk management framework, an entity level risk management or a business risk management framework? Yes, it is. All organizations have it. When an organization talks about competition, when an organization talks about a product pricing, it talks about the various regulations which it is getting subjected to. It's actually talking about risk management. It is talking about cyber. It is actually talking about risk management. Now, if all are talking about risk management, then why is it mandatory and why does it need to be documented? Because I think the segregation from a people and a process becomes very important at the end of the day. But we'll take that separately when we talk about enterprise risk management. Here, as of now, all organizations have a risk management framework. It may be documented, it may not be documented. And if it is not documented, doesn't mean that it is not being monitored. We had this concept of IFC came up in 2013 under the Companies Act 2013, internal financial control. When IFC was being talked about, it was clear. Financial controls include ELC, which is entity level, and functional level, both controls. Now, does a small organization with a mere turnover, say of 5 crore, 10 crore, or even less than that, need an enterprise risk management framework which is equally robust as compared to a 1,000 or a 10,000 crore company? No, it doesn't need to do that way. And I think those things have got aligned to a very large extent. There are some guidance available by the Institute of Chartered Accountants also on that. But I think as a prudent internal auditor, it is extremely critical that we value and we weigh all these things. That what is the size of an organization, the cost of control should be commensurate to that, and it should not be overweighing that. In today's time, when we talk about COVID, there are so many controls that have collapsed. Believe me, they have collapsed because the new normal, the new way of working, it has definitely. Are we having adequate segregation of duties all across? Perhaps not. Is it wrong? I don't think it is wrong. Does the internal auditor need to use a different lens to look at things? Yes, it does need to look at things in a different lens. So I slightly digressed, but entity level controls, business risk management, extremely critical. Whistleblower policy, code of conduct, extremely critical. To have such frameworks in place, what will an internal auditor do? Internal auditor is expected to raise red flags. Is something going wrong? No, not necessarily, but is something vulnerable to go wrong? Yes. Where does the feed come? The feed comes from a whistleblower as well. Will the whistleblower always be formal? Perhaps not. Will it be informal? It could be. In many organizations today, India as an economy has so many promoter driven large groups. Some of them have, some or most of them now have, but say if a company is a 200 crore, 500 crore, will it have a formal whistleblower policy? No. But is the whistleblower concept as a concept very strong in those organizations? Believe me, it is extremely strong. You talk to the promoter, he will have his own people sitting in different functions, and they'll be the key people over there. Code of conduct, extremely critical for employees, for vendors, third parties, for senior management. Even if you look at the clause 49, which is LODR now, it talks about code of conduct for employees and also for prevention of insider trading and all. Internal audit, is it independently reporting to the audit committee, or is it just a tick in the checkbox? I think that has been done to death now. It is to a large extent independent, and you look at the cases in the recent past. I think prudence for internal auditors would be to be independent completely. Roles, responsibilities, segregation of duties, legal compliance framework I touched around, fraud risk management perhaps may not be required to be documented for a small organization, but large ones, multiple geographies, multiple product lines. Is it required? Yes. Take an example of a cigarette company, a cigarette manufacturing company, is it subjected to more fraud or not? Could be possible. Why? You're dealing with the end customer. You're dealing with the panwalas and all. Your collection is happening there. You may have all those other cash collection management systems, which is fine. But at the end of the day, it is cash which is getting collected. It won't come. No end consumer is going to give you check for buying a packet of cigarette. Yeah. So is it risky? Yes. Logistics company. I'm not saying they are all They are all having frauds. I'm not concluding that, but the vulnerability could be there depending on culture of an organization, culture of the economy at the same time. Culture audit, I think Sumant sir talked about a while back on culture audit, extremely critical. I think internal audit can be successful in the coming times if you do a culture audit. It should be part of internal audit, actually, if you ask me. Business and operations continuity, DRP and BCP, a business continuity plan. Today, a pandemic, all of us faced a pandemic. What could we do? Did the BCP could manage it? I think people were the most critical at this point of time who managed the operations, people. Did any organization highlight a pandemic? I'm not saying COVID, a pandemic in their enterprise risk management framework. I will not say none of them did. Very, very few, very, very few. But going forward, I think all will get this documented. But what will be the outcome? You don't know what the next pandemic could be like. Maybe it's a decade later, it's 50 years, it's next year. Never know what sort of a pandemic may come. But I think the preparedness, and that's the whole genesis of an ERM or enterprise risk management framework. The preparedness to face a particular consequence if something goes wrong is a great takeaway of an enterprise risk management framework. Succession planning. Are the critical positions in an organization identified? Critical doesn't mean C-level. Critical doesn't mean the top management, doesn't mean the functional heads. It is the role the person is or the individual is giving or performing in a particular organization. The job rotation concept which organizations have, which perhaps to a large extent in a private setup because of globalization has gone down, but in the public sectors, in the government companies, it is still date quite prevalent, is one of the things to have a good succession plan in place. Critical positions getting identified. There are some private organizations which have an excellent succession plan in place. A person who joins at the first day as the junior most, maybe as a trainee as well, and they can see the spark, the person will become a CEO or a top executive in that organization or not, and what should be the roadmap for it? 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, whatever roadmap. Succession planning. MIS, extremely critical again. Management information system. A top level MIS which presents to the board of directors, a mid level and a tactical level, all of it getting linked to the objectives and KPIs of a function and also of the individuals, the functional heads. All of these things, each of these things is something which the internal auditors ought to look at before they just look at transactions in an organization. That is extremely critical, and that was the whole idea, to spell out some of these entity level controls, but each of these can have a separate session. So we will at some point of time organize those sessions, and we will run through each of these components of these sessions because they are extremely sensitive and critical. Can we go to the next slide, please? Process level, functional level controls. This is more on account to do with the IFC concept, the internal financial controls. Though it was not, the previous slide was not related to that, but this is more to do with that. Is it documented in today's times? I think in the previous session, it was again said, yes, it is documented, and I fully agree. But is it being practiced in spirit? I think companies are changing their tone. They are moving towards adopting these frameworks in spirit as well. The internal auditors are supposed to look at that. In India, the concept is that, unlike in the western part of the world, where till date, the Sarbanes-Oxley and the internal controls are being looked into by two different sets of team. There's all the merit in that at the same time, and that was a confusion which prevailed when IFC came up. That is IFC to be looked into by the in-house? Is it in-house, I mean the functional heads? Is it to be looked into by the internal auditors? A good practice is have a control self-assessment in place. So the people who are responsible for the various key controls within the IFC framework take acknowledgement and accept the responsibility that these are in place. But the internal auditor should definitely look at the key controls. They must ask as part of their audit plan, whichever area they are doing, the repository of all the controls for a particular function, identifying the key ones, and it's already identified. So when we take up the IFC session, we'll talk about it in detail, but the key ones, and that should be looked into, and look into from an operational effectiveness point of view as well. So that's to touch on the process level controls. Can we just go to the next one? Now this is interesting. Sumant sir spoke a bit about a 360-degree approach which an internal auditor should look at. Now what does that 360-degree approach mean? Believe me, this is something again which is this concept is to a large extent my brainchild. And if it is, I will take that credit. But smart word is something which is not my brainchild. I did think of this word smart. Now everybody is talking about smart. Everything is smart today's time. But I think the credit definitely goes. I don't think the managing partner Karthik Radia is there on this. I'm not sure he's there or not, but yes, that was smart, was coined by him. So I definitely want to give credit to whosoever contribute in the journey when I am making certain changes in terms of any contribution to the profession which I'm doing. So that's smart internal audit, a 360-degree coverage. What does it talk about? Today, when you step into an audit committee, are they comfortable with the transactions which you show? No, they are not. They may look at those as an exception, but they want the analytics to be looked into in deep diving all the transactions, perhaps 100% of the population. Is it possible in all organizations? No, it is not. If you have a good ERP system, it is possible. If you have an ERP system where it's like a GIGO, a garbage in, garbage out, it's not possible. If you have a manual system, let's accept that some of the organizations have a manual system. Is analytics possible? No, it is not. What should we do? Should we still focus on analytics? I don't think. There are other ways and means looking at risk-based. You can look at the chain of transaction, identify the risk points where there is more vulnerability, critical points, and then look at the transactions, the sample transactions out, or a larger population also over there. And that's how you can do it. So there are alternate ways and means. We cannot just say that if Excel or a tool is not possible to be deployed, so we relinquish all our responsibilities from it. We don't. Eye of forensic, extremely important, critical at the same time. ERP controls, if it is there, I think as internal auditors, we need to beef up the system, the automation controls. When this concept of internal financial controls came, I think it was a game changer in the lives of all the internal auditors and the organizations. Two takeaways which came right there were, one, how much is an automation in an organization? Are we really banking on the tool or the e-enablement which the organization has invested money in? Oracle, SAP, Navision, any of the software. Tally for matter. Tally is also equally a good software that way. So optimizing of the ERP controls and automation efficiency. Today we talk about robotics, and also I think that's also to do with that. An internal auditor can definitely give a roadmap in terms of robotics. Not only doing a robotic internal audit, but also robotic process automation, RPA, both the sides. Operational auditing, extremely critical. The nuances which would be there in a ENR, energy and natural resources, oil and gas sector, I actually have a passion for that sector, so that's why I'm picking that example again. But the nuances which will be there in that sector will not perhaps be same in any other sector. That's what operational auditing will talk about. Compliance, we've already spoken. Governance is to do with the entity level controls, which again we have spoken at length. But having a complete view which will encompass your analytics, your fraud risk, automation controls. Is it preventive? Is the tendency of a control or moving towards preventive? But it's extremely critical to have detective controls also. A good ratio is 80-20 that way. 20 should be detective, 80 should be preventive. This way, that's extremely critical, because detective controls will help you identify something going wrong or the vulnerability of something drastically to go wrong in future. Operational auditing, compliance, and governance. I think that's, as a holistic view, if you see, is a smart internal audit concept. All of us do it that way, somewhere or the other. I think we just need to perhaps do it in some places in a structured way, but all of us do it in that way. Can you go to the next one? Is smart internal audit good enough? And that's why I just wanted to touch on this slide. I think the internal audit has evolved and should evolve. It cannot be static at any point of time, because the business requirements keep on changing, keep on emerging. COVID has been taken as an example here, but pandemics is something which I think internal auditors definitely need to look at. Today, if you go to the audit committee, I'm sure most of you would have witnessed this question. Because of COVID, because of this pandemic, and now that the operations have, in some pockets, it has started. Are the operations good? Are they equally going good? Are there some challenges? Are you comfortable with the control environment, the control frameworks that are there? There is rotation of jobs, not 100% attendance. How are we managing those controls? These are the questions. So the preparedness for new and different kind of black swans, pandemics, which may occur in future, how is that? It has actually made us realize the importance of cash, hard cash, cash flows. It's also equally important that it has made us realize cyber risk, the PPC, which I spoke about initially, the people, the policies, procedure, and the cyber risk. Cyber risk is extremely important. Work from home, bring your own device, remote access. What if somebody hacks your system? Is your system good enough? Maybe when you are in the office, the controls are different, but when you are at home, is it equally robust? Are the control points, firewalls, and etc. are equally robust or not? Standard operating procedures. Will the old school of thought continue, or we need to make more flexible standard operating procedures? Pricing in today's times, competition will change. Safety of people, extremely critical. Today you enter into any office, you will find video displays, all sorts of social distancing. Today it's because of this pandemic, social distancing, but I think safety has a larger context to talk about. But safety of people has become equally important over there. The business environment, external, internal, both are changing. Compliance, we spoke about it. Fraud scenarios is critical in I think any sort of a pandemic. People may take advantage of it, and internal auditors may become accountable at the same time. Fraud risk. I didn't touch on this thing because we are not talking too much on the IFC, but IFC is the first time in India under a regulation, Companies Act 2013, where it wants the framework to highlight fraud risk in all the functions. Fraud risk becomes extremely important over there, and more, I think, in terms of productivity, in terms of operational excellence, it's a done deal that the internal auditors are supposed to contribute to this particular piece. So internal audit, whatever we may do, we may use a smart internal audit approach, but I think we cannot be static. We have to be dynamic. We have to be evolving with the external as well as the internal environment. Internal, I mean the organization; external, the outside world, which is influencing this. Most of the stakeholders are outside of the internal environment. It's extremely critical that we see from a holistic angle. If you look at a corporate governance, all of these things get covered. So there is a large role, a wide role, and similarly, there are a lot of opportunities which internal auditors at the same time have because of all these things. Thank you very much. I think I have tried to keep the time because somewhere my presentation would have come in way of the lunch. So I thought I'll move a bit fast, but I hope it was interesting. Thank you all, and over to you, Mohit.
Thank you so much, Sid, and not at all. I think it was wonderful listening to you, and thanks for enlightening us with the changing dynamics of corporate governance and a large contribution that internal auditors can do to strengthen the corporate governance initiatives of the organizations. Thanks a lot. We can quickly move to our next section, and we'll try to make it really fast. It's on the women professionals. So women professionals are leading from the front and achieving new heights in all fields. On the occasion of Independence Day, discussing about the role of women in armed forces, even the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, said that India is amongst the countries of the world where women are involved in combat roles in the Navy and the Air Force. So today we have Sana Bakai with us. Sana is a dynamic professional with over 14 years of experience as chartered accountant. In addition, she has also completed the professional qualifications for Company Secretary, DISA and LLB. Amongst various other memberships she is the founder and chairperson of the Women's Circle of the Institute of Internal Auditors, Delhi chapter, and chief editor of IIA India magazine. With this, I would now like to welcome Ms. Sana Bakai to talk about IIA initiatives to support women professionals. Sana, we welcome you. Sorry, we are not able to listen. Some problem with the audio. Do you want to try the cooking of the video once?
Mohit, what I suggest is you can go to the next session if there is one, and meantime she can re-log in.
Sure. I think we will move to the next session and we'll again come back to listen. The next session is by starting on student membership. And Sanam, you can open Saket's presentation. And I'll say the future of any country is in the hands of its students, and the students are the real treasure of any country. So we have with us Mr. Saket Mehra to talk about the student membership initiatives of IIA. Saket leads the auto practice of Grant Thornton, focusing on advisory, tax audits, and has been actively involved with industry bodies including ECMA, CIAM, CII, ASSOCHAM, Institute of Directors, and IIA. He is the Vice President of IIA India Delhi chapter and is also a member of the subcommittee on internal standards of Internal Audit Standard Board of the ICI. In the career spanning over 18 years, Saket has led several advisory engagements around internal audits, enterprise risk management, corporate governance, and forensic reviews. Thanks a lot, Saket, for being here, and I would now request you to take us through your presentation.
Thank you, Mohit. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but your presentation is not displayed. Sana,
no
if you
issues.
could...
I think that's okay. It can come anytime, I believe. Well, thanks again, Mohit, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Himender ji, Rahul ji, for inviting me on this platform. It's a pleasure to get connected with people of Lucknow, as well as people from the other parts of the country. I think the context has already been set, and Mohit rightly said that students are the future. And if we look at what respected President Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar talked about in the morning, we heard Mr. Nikhil Kochar, Mr. Suman Chadda. I think the common theme which has been emerging is that corporate governance is playing a very significant role. And in the previous presentation, Sid very elaborately talked about how it has evolved over the years, how the importance of corporate governance has now been realized by companies not only in India but even globally. I think taking clue from what we heard in the morning, we thought we'll just talk about a bit more in terms of what IA Global as well as IA India are attempting to kind of promote the CIA or institute or the internal audit as a profession amongst the students. And this is so very important because what we have seen, if you can just move on to the next slide, Mohit, please. What we have seen globally, companies have started realizing the fact that yes, there is a need of internal auditors, not only a professional internal auditor, but even good graduates, sharp graduates who have acumen towards understanding the processes, who have acumen towards understanding the things or looking at the things from a magnifying lens. And that's where they have been driving few agendas, largely to promote the student membership in the different parts of the globe. So there is academic awareness program which is being run, as well as there is internal auditing education partnership, which IA Global runs with various universities, schools, and other institutes. And the larger theme of these programs is not only to promote internal audit as a profession, but also to kind of bring very sharp-edged graduates who can then be absorbed by the corporates in a better environment. And we have seen companies, I mean, not only corporates, consulting firms, and now even investment banks have been asking for professionals. I mean, when they take interns or people for internship, I mean, yes, somebody who has really seen or who has an experience of looking at processes, systems, controls, really have an edge with respect to getting absorbed in these larger companies. And it's a similar trend which we are seeing happening now in India. I mean, I can talk about in our organization when we hire interns or when the interns come on board for a period of 2 months or 3 months period. I think there is any which ways an expectation from them to work, slightly differently or wear the hat of an internal auditor while working on these engagements. And I've been talking to these younger graduates, and they remain so excited, so passionate about internal audit profession, and the kind of experience what they gain over the 2 or 3 months period of internship that they do with any firm for that matter is phenomenal, I think. And that really changes their mindset. When they come and join for internship, their whole objective is to get a stamp of a reputed organization onto their CVs. But once they go through what internal audit as a profession is, what typically an auditor performs while looking at the systems, processes, they feel completely excited, and at least there is a directional setting which happens in their mind that yes, this is also an alternative career which can be pursued. So what we did, I mean, thanks to the leadership of President Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar, in India we have launched something like a student development committee as part of the core agenda for the current financial year. Mohit, if you can go to the next slide, please. So it's, there is a student development committee which has been created. And I'll tell you the background. I mean, we did some research before forming this committee, and what we realized that in India, the employability of BCom or the graduates, the commerce graduates, has been declining over the last few years. And particularly over the last 2 years, the trend has been very significant in terms of the declining trend. And there could be multiple reasons for it. People who are graduating in commerce and people who are supplementing their skills with information technology, with advanced technology around IoT, RPA, so on and so forth, are still having some avenues to get absorbed. But people who have not equipped themselves, it becomes a challenge for them to really get reasonably or adequately employed in the corporate sector. So what we did, there is a core team which has been created comprising of Sana, Sid, Mohit, and everyone. There was a survey which was done to really understand what are the challenges students are facing when it comes to pursuing CIA as an option. And there are very interesting facts which came out. People were not, the students were not clear about where to go for coaching, where to go for study materials. The cost of study material was appearing to be too high. So I think we accumulated all those challenges, we thought through it, and we came out with a common agenda with respect to what should be driven in the year one, when we have launched this student development committee. It got formally launched in the month of April. And there are 5 broad themes which came out. There are other themes also which I'll talk about, but there are these 5 broad themes which came out. Number one, because it was a challenge for the students to identify the right learning partner or the right coaching institute, so-called, there is a initiative which is being driven to really identify who can be the learning partner within India, who can provide quality study material, who can provide quality faculty, who can be a nationalized or maybe a regional based learning partner in imparting education around the CIA certification. There are the 3 parts of the examination which are there. So that's the first agenda we are attempting to drive, and hopefully very soon we'll have these learning partners identified on a pan-India basis to meet this particular objective. The second objective that we are driving is to really enhance the student membership. Now this is so very important because a student who is still unclear in his mind about when to pursue CIA, whether to pursue CIA or not to pursue CIA, even if he or she becomes a member of the institute, he or she still gets a lot of benefits attached to it, be it with respect to access to the knowledge base, be it with respect to access to the networking opportunities, be it with respect to the learning opportunities, participation in the webinars, so on and so forth. So I think that's a second objective that we are driving in terms of how do we bring more number of students under the umbrella so that there is adequate amount of awareness which is getting created. The third is more with respect to how do we start connecting with the educational institutions, which could be the universities or the other private universities, the schools. And as I said, globally, it's being driven very strongly in terms of wherein there are tie-ups with the universities, there are tie-ups with the schools. There is basic understanding of the internal audit as a profession, which is being included as part of the curriculum. There is foundation which is created with respect to appearing for the CIA examination. So on a similar trend, we intend to kind of make sure that yes, there is adequate amount of connect which happens with the academia over the next 1 year. The fourth is more in terms of organizing awareness sessions for the students. So like I was giving an example of when these interns come to our organization to take internship or to undergo internship, frankly, they are not clear or they are not aware of what internal audit as a profession is when they join. So I think there is a lot of gap, there is a lot of understanding or awareness gap which exists in the younger minds with respect to what internal audit is, what are we supposed to do, what is that our role exists in the organization. So these kind of sessions, these kind of small capsules will really equip the students to understand what internal audit is and how it can benefit them in the longer run. So that's the other agenda or the objective that we are intending to drive. Last but not the least is more in terms of launching some kind of an integrated CIA program in consultation with IA Global. That's something which is also under discussion. There are also MOUs which we are planning to sign with multiple bodies, be it Institute of Company Secretaries or Institute of Cost and Management Accountants. There are some MOUs which are still existing, which would further be enhanced. But that's the broad theme or the broad objectives that which the Student Development Committee is planning to achieve. Mohit, if we can go to the next slide. So I think what we are expecting from you, I mean, it's pleasure again, I would say, to talk to you people. I think most of you would be from industry, from consulting firms, from their own practice. So I think one is we would want you to encourage students, people who are postgraduates who are undertaking CA internship with you, to make them understand and aware about what CIA as a profession, I mean, as an alternative profession which exists for them. We would encourage you to speak to the student community and make them aware about what benefits can they achieve if they were to become a member of IIA. Benefits around access to knowledge, access to networking opportunities, these multiple sessions, training programs, etc. We would encourage you to get into a discussion wherever you can with respect to inclusion of internal audit as a curriculum in the private universities. I mean, we understand Uttar Pradesh itself has close to 1,500 odd colleges. So there is a huge opportunity for the students to get come under the umbrella of the IA profession. And obviously, in terms of the larger objective is to create awareness amongst the masses. So I think in the interest of time, I know we are running pretty behind schedule. I won't take much of a time, but that's the broad theme which we thought to communicate. And thank you for being patient, and thank you, Mohit, Hemanderji, and Rahul for inviting me on this platform. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Saket. Thanks for your delightful brief, and I'm sure students at Lucknow Club will take full benefits of this program. Now we will go back to Sana. Sana, if you could open up your line and make your presentation. Now we are again getting the same problem, not able to listen.
I think Mohit, some challenge.
Am I audible now?
Yes, Sana, you are audible now.
Okay. Fine. Thank you, Mohit, and congratulations to the IIA Lucknow Audit Club team to organize their first eConnect event on auspicious occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi. I remember almost a year back when Siddeshwar has initiated the idea of Women's Circle, and we were discussing on formation of Women's Circle to promote gender diversity in internal audit professionals. This is the area which requires attention. Let me share some statistics as published by IIA Research Foundation. Women representation at CAE level is 26%. However, only 13% are working at director level, 17% at manager level, but 44% at staff level. It is apparent that the thirst in this profession is not less. However, the women start their career in internal audit, but as they move forward on their career graph, the percentage drops for various reasons, including the personal ones. Unless women will not be there at the leadership role, it will be strenuous to bridge the gap and promote gender diversity. When the talk goes around promoting the gender diversity in the profession, the perception goes differently. Here I would like to quote Jane Galvin Lewis. She rightly mentioned, you don't have to be anti-man to be pro-women. Finally, the first Women's Circle in India was pioneered by IIA Delhi chapter in its annual conference on 18th October 2019, and the momentum continues. Following the footsteps of IIA Delhi chapter, on 19 December, the Bombay chapter has launched the Women's Circle during their annual conference. Later, Madras chapter has also launched. And during the national conference, which was held in Bangalore on 31st January 2020, early this year, the National Women's Circle rolled out in the presence of Ms. Janita Joan, chairperson of IIA Inc. Hyderabad and Calcutta chapters also set in motion during their respective annual conferences. Now it's time to augment this initiative to audit clubs. The vision of the Women's Circle is to promote women in leadership role and to enable the career growth opportunities. To effectuate the vision of the Women's Circle, 4 targets are led. First, providing networking opportunities to promote career. Second, advocacy of women's career acceleration. Third, guidance and mentoring. And the fourth one is developing leadership skills. To achieve our objectives and fulfill the targets envisaged, we have formed certain focus groups: communication and networking, training and events, guidance and mentoring. So the purpose of these groups, so the communication and the networking group is emphasizing on improving the communication and extending networking opportunities to IIA Women's Circle members. The training group focal point is to identify the relevant topics for the women professionals and organizing trainings, including leadership trainings. The guidance and mentoring group is distinctly working on extending support to IIA Delhi chapter women members in career acceleration and guidance in resuming career after a career break. So with these objectives and the focus group in place, we would like to have participation of Lucknow Audit Club members as well to take this initiative forward and spread the word in their respective areas. And we look forward to connect with more women IIA members from Lucknow and the adjacent locations to make most out of the initiatives which we have already started at IIA Delhi chapter. Thank you so much, and over to you, Mohit.
Thanks a lot, Sana. Thanks for all the initiatives you are taking for empowering women in the profession, and assure you of our support from Lucknow Club while you move ahead on the journey. With this, I would like to open the lines for the participants to share their queries, inputs, and suggestions for us. And Sana, may I request you to take up the members' post and questions which any of the panelists may reply one by one.
Mohit, I would just, in the paucity of time, we can actually keep a note of the questions and get back later as well. Maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions. That's it. Yeah.
Someone asked, can we get opportunity to see illustrative RCM in the slide and test script? Okay.
Yes, we'll share that. Yeah.
There is a question for Sid. Better to include board instead of AC at the first cornerstone of corporate governance. AC is only a subcommittee.
Yeah, it is actually this subcommittee which is specifically under the charter required to look into the governance matter. See, board will have a lot of matters including governance, but the specific audit committee charter entails this thing.
Okay. For Hemendra Rahul, there is a question. Model 3 for resourcing option is not clear. This is neither included in the IIA guidance nor is practiced. Perhaps there is some local experience. Please elaborate.
Sana, I think there is no resourcing model that was discussed in the presentation. Maybe we'll have to relook at it. It's
Okay.
only the control value chain that we discussed about. Maybe. Sid, you are saying something?
No, I was saying maybe the models that we spoke about, the 4 models, but I didn't get the question clear.
Okay. The next is SOP development offered by internal audit. Who will improve this SOP?
Yes.
Who will improve this SOP?
So internal auditors are also, see, they are not only supposed to look at the compliance of policies and procedures, they can also proactively, and which is need of the hour, help in documenting the policies and procedures, particularly the procedures, not the policy, but it is approved by the board of directors finally.
Okay. Next question is, who is ultimately responsible in a co-sourced model? Is it the CAE or the responsibility is shared accordingly?
Audit committee.
The
It's
question
not that
is,
the others are not responsible, but ultimately the audit committee becomes responsible. But having said that, it is not that the CAE or the even the team who is doing it at a reasonable position, manager and above, they can also be made accountable.
okay.
But the overall responsibility will be of the audit committee.
All right. Next question is it possible for one internal auditor to take up both assurance and consulting projects simultaneously for different clients?
No, that's not a good governance. That's not a good governance. Statutory audit. No? They said statutory audit and consulting.
They asked, is it possible for one internal auditor to take up both assurance and consulting projects simultaneously for different clients? They're asking for different clients.
Till the time it is not resulting in support of implementation, it is fine, because otherwise then the independence gets compromised.
But for different clients, you can do. For one client, you are providing an assurance, and if there is no relation between the client and the entities altogether, for a different client, then you can provide, because then they will not be in any conflict.
Yeah. Mohit, the question will become relevant only for the same client. If it is different, then obviously they can. Yeah.
Correct.
The next question is, can a scope set by internal auditor be changed during an ongoing audit based on new information available?
Yes, it can be and it should be.
And I know there would be many more. We take note of all that questions and we get back to that as Sid just advised.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. So I think we can move more towards closure. Once again, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all participants and would like to mention to all the members that with their support and motivation, we would continue to organize such events, trainings and seminars for the members and work towards growth of members in terms of skill building or generating professional or employment opportunities. Technology has enabled us to come together. Let me take this opportunity to thank Menaz and Chanchal, who have silently at the back end supported to have this event move smoothly. Now, Mohitji, I would request you to go for the closure of the session and deliver vote of thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Mohitji. I, on behalf of Executive Committee and members of Lucknow Club of IIA Delhi chapter and all the professional colleagues from Lucknow, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the speakers for gracing the occasion with your presence. Special thanks to Nikhil sir, TK sir, Deepak sir, and Suman sir to taking time out of their busy schedule and enlighten us with the various initiatives taken by Institute of Internal Auditor to support its members. Many thanks to Siddheshwar Bhallaji for his mesmerizing overview of corporate governance and role of internal auditor in an organization for governance framework. I understand this was just the tip of the iceberg. We are eagerly looking forward for a detailed session from you, sir. Thanks a lot, Shri Hemendra ji and Shri Rahul ji, and also Mohit ji for providing such a broadened overview of the ocean of opportunities lying ahead of internal auditor and how it is relevant for professionals. Initiatives by Women's Circle under the leadership of Sana and student membership under the leadership of Saket are very commendable. I hope members at Lucknow Club would reap full benefit of these initiatives in coming time. At last, a big thanks to all the participants and professionals to attend the program in a huge number and making this event successful. We are committed to serve the profession and we would continue to serve the profession, and we will plan some more sessions very soon. I guess we can end the program for the day. Many thanks to all and have a great day. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi to all.
Thank you.
Thank you and all the best to all of you. Well done, guys. I'm sure we will take it forward to other clubs.
Thank you everyone for attending the session, and happy Ganesh Chaturthi to all of you.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.